Right. It's a long agenda, so we'll have to evaluate that as we get into the evening. But some things, if we have to, could be postponed.
Okay.
Nothing forecasted for that.
Alrighty. Overview of Zoom meeting operations and procedures, rules for participation, mute your microphones, be recognized by one of the members of the board, please, and we will let you speak. Public forum, opportunity for citizens not on the agenda to briefly share comments or concerns. Yes, Jimmy.
Hello there, guys. Listen, I just want to give a little shout out to you guys and to Valerie, especially and her staff, with the inception of this business park finally getting off the ground. People don't realize the work that has gone into this by especially Valerie and her crew and the select board. This has been an outstanding performance by these people, and I think we should all be thankful that we have them running the show for us. That's it.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Appreciate that.
Anyone else? Paul.
Hi, my name is Paul Forlenz. I'm on the select board in Lincoln, but I'm talking to you as a Lincoln resident who uses Briggs Hill every day. I have a couple of suggestions that I'm hoping will improve the situation at Briggs Hill, Lincoln Road 116 that do not require the closing of Briggs Hill. The first issue is the limited line of sight at the intersection of Lincoln Road and 116. I think the report described that well, except that they didn't take into consideration that actually gets worse in the wintertime because there's a snowbank that's pushed up against the fence, and that further limits the line of sight.
Paul, can I stop you for a minute because that's an agenda item?
Yeah.
And we can cover it. It's I think the second or third item down on our agenda. If you wouldn't mind waiting until we get to that.
Happy to apologize for that.
No, that's okay. We've got a report tonight, and then I'm sure there'll be some discussion. So if you wouldn't mind waiting, I'd appreciate that.
Sure.
That way it's all in the same place in the minutes.
Yep. Gotcha.
Thanks, Paul.
Darla, you had your hand up. You're muted. You don't want to say anything? That's not very nice of you. Anyone else? Hearing none, seeing none, we'll move on. Department head roundtable. Bruce, are you on?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Good evening.
Just a couple of things. Ian set up a compliment/complaint form on the website. So just want to let everybody know that if they wish to make some kind of compliment or complaint, go to the bristolvt.org website to do that. And we're going to continue to add more forms and make that more useful. And we have just switched over to our new database. It's got a little bit of a learning curve to it. So that's what we're working on.
Perfect. Any questions for Bruce? Alrighty.
I just want to jump in on that form, the beta testing on that form. For some reason, it's intended to, the replies are intended to go to me and Bruce and perhaps another email, but they're not reaching me, and we don't know why that is. So forms that do get submitted will be received by somebody, but not me for the moment anyway.
I'm sure we'll figure that out at some point.
Right. But as long as they get received by somebody, that's a good thing.
Yeah. All right. Brett.
Good evening. Can you hear me, Peaker?
Yes, we can.
All right. Hey, I just wanted to take my few minutes this evening and just provide everybody a quick update on our recent fire department recognition and awards event we had at the fire station, just to let our select board know, and anyone who's listening, some accomplishments, years of service, milestones for some of their firefighters at the Bristol Fire Department. So 2 Saturdays ago, I think it was, I don't actually remember what the date was, but we celebrated 2020 recognition, whether it be a milestone, an anniversary, or a particular award that we, the fire department, distribute. We had several service pins we gave out for 2020 for firefighters reaching milestones. We had two young men who hit 5 years with the fire department, Anthony Robidoux and Nathan Buska. We had one 20-year service pin we handed out to firefighter Nathan Bouvier. We had two 25-year service pins for firefighters Lance Purley and Brian W. Wendell. Two 30-year service pins to Peter J. Ryan and Jim Whitcomb. One 35-year service pin to Joel Bouvier. One 45-year service pin to Peter Coffey, and one 50-year service pin to Mr. Edward Shepard. So there's obviously some significant milestones there, but we had a great event a couple weeks ago. It's a family event where, significant others, partners, children were all there. We just enjoyed a great afternoon over at the Bristol Fire Station. So we also handed out a couple awards for 2020, things we do in-house to recognize our folks who go above and beyond. Obviously, 2020, as you all know, was a very difficult and challenging year for anyone. It really doesn't matter what you do, but in the emergency services, it was particularly challenging. And, we certainly saw a significant decrease in participation from our firefighters in 2020 for various reasons. So there were those who really stood out because they stepped up and continued to providing exceptional services to the community. We recognized, firefighter James Goodyear. He received the Training Hour Award for the department. Kind of worth noting, I think James has received, we've given out that award, I think 11 years now, and he's received it 5 times. So he definitely puts a lot of effort into training. We recognized retired Fire Chief Mark Bouvier, presenting him with the Outstanding Service Award, particularly for Mark's work on the food drive for the last 15 years that benefits the Have a Heart food shelf. Mark is stepping down from that role this year. We want to recognize Peter Coffey. He received the Firefighter of the Year Award. Our department, for the first time ever, we gave out a Outstanding Contributor Award to the fire department, and that was actually given to Deputy Chief Eric Foran and Assistant Fire Chief Kevin LaRose. And I think it's also worth noting that the nominations for these awards, they come from the members of the organization. So again, it was a great afternoon. We certainly appreciate your support as we do spend a little bit of money recognizing our folks with service pins and such. So, but well worth the investment. So thank you. And that is all I have, pending any questions.
Any questions? Alrighty, thank you, Brett. Eric.
Hi. Let's see. We started our crushing last week, so we're about halfway, a little better than halfway done on that. We got Stephen 802 Excavating up there finishing up a grant up on Upper Notch Road, stone lining the ditches. The 2 new guys that we have they're coming into it. They're coming around. Getting it. So that's good. Hopefully this winter will pan out good. Harvey Road has been completed. Everything is back. We've seeded it. Josh did a good job on that down there. It looks great. The embankment has been fixed that the state, said that we needed to fix, so that's all taken care of. I think that's about it. And then just routine stuff is normal.
Any questions for Eric? Okay,
Beaker, this is Brett. I have a question for the road department,
go ahead.
if I may. Just a question. I think I brought this up at a recent department head meeting, but my question is, how does one go about making a request to push back, cut back, brush overgrown sidewalks, trees that are blocking line of sight at intersections? I'll provide one example. The intersection of Pleasant and North, I find extremely dangerous, not only if you're in a vehicle, but if you are a young child trying to cross the street there, as you literally have to step into the road before you can actually see to the south because of the overgrown trees at that intersection. So as I walk around town with my dog quite often, there's definitely overgrown areas. Nothing I don't like ducking under branches, but how do we, the town, go about asking to clip back overgrown trees and sidewalks?
Typically a request is made to Valerie and then it's passed on to Eric. We usually go around, prior to snowplow season.
Usually the end of October. We send a letter out, it should be going out here anytime now, stating that we're going to be coming around trimming the trees on the sidewalks and stuff, and if you want to trim your own tree, that's fine, it just needs to be done by this certain date, and if not, then the town goes around, or us, and we trim for the sidewalk tractor and sight distance and things of that nature. And at the same time, we also try to get the intersections at the same time.
So if Pleasant and North is a concern, we'll have them take a look at that.
Yep.
Yeah. So as far as public safety is concerned, those hazards should be addressed now and not in October. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Anything else?
I get that.
Say what?
Sign that and then give it to him.
Is Meredith on?
Meredith is not on tonight.
And is that it for?
I believe so.
I saw Kevin, but he put a T there, so I wouldn't have to ask if that was Kevin Hansen again. Thank you, Kevin. All right, on to regular business. Firehouse Apartment VCDP application for public hearing and application resolution, Evernorth and Addison County Community Trust.
Right. This agenda item follows up on numerous other agenda items, and John and Elise Schambecker are on board tonight to walk us through the application that they are preparing, that the town is sponsoring on their behalf for development of affordable housing, mixed income housing off of Firehouse Drive.
So this is similar to the same thing we did with the Hunt Farm and the one on Mountain Street, where you provide all the legwork. We are just a pass through for the money.
Correct.
I see a lot of none. Somebody can speak.
Yes. Yes. Those are before my time, but yes.
Well, I think actually neither, maybe Hunt Farm originally, but we did apply for this funding for the Mountain Street project, but we were not awarded that funding. So that's why I was kind of not, it's the same idea, but we didn't actually get the money. So happy to talk about it. I think we've actually talked about this money, even in regards to this project earlier knew that it was coming, but this is a formal public hearing that's required as a source of the funding. And this is CDBG, Community Development Block Grant funding that comes from the federal government to the state of Vermont. And the way the state of Vermont has decided to distribute that money is through municipalities, through projects. And the reason for that is to make sure that municipalities have a voice at the table for these projects that are getting funded with this funding. So this is an opportunity to hear from the public, to hear from the select board. The select board has to, approve the application and then approve, pass another resolution if we're awarded the funding. So it's just to make sure the town has an opportunity to be engaged in the process. We do the majority of we do as much of the work as we can for the municipality, recognizing that there's not a lot of direct benefit. We know there's a benefit to the town of getting this money to come into the town and into this housing, which is great. But we definitely take the lead on the application process and all of the background that is required. One change, I'm not sure, the last grant that went through the town, it used to be that the town was granted the money and needed to loan it to this partnership for tax purposes. And that meant it had to stay on the town's books for 20 years. That we finally figured out how to make that not happen, because that was causing a lot of headaches. So the good news is the town really is a pass-through in the case that the money is granted to the town, and then the town will grant the money likely to Addison County Community Trust to bring it into the project. This piece of funding is our last piece of funding that is required for us to be able to actually move forward with the project. So if you looked at the materials, you can see this is the last $535,000 out of a pretty big, I'm trying to look at what the last budget number was, but over $6 million project. So we're really excited to have secured all of the other funding. And this is our last piece we need. Right now, we are on track if we're awarded this money to go out to bid and be able to start construction at the same time as the first commercial building in the Stony Hill parcel, hopefully in March. So happy to answer any questions from the select board or anyone from the public that might be at the meeting.
Also, Samantha, I made you a co-host in case there are any images you want to share on your screen.
Okay, I'm happy to. I think I can't tell if there's public. I think most of the select board is very familiar with the project, but happy to share my screen. We can pull up. Let's see.
Michelle has a question.
Yep.
I just wanted to ask, I was looking through the documents in the grant, and it was talking about the other funding that you had, and some of it says deferred. I mean, I know what deferral means, but does that mean that it's deferred and you guys don't ever have to pay that back? Or is it just deferred for now?
If it's the money from the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, I think that's probably the deferred loans that you would see there. Those are real loans that are on the books. We don't pay their interest free. And we have very detailed documents with Vermont Housing Conservation Board about how and when those loans would be repaid. As long as the housing is perpetually affordable, we're not able to repay those loans, but part of the reason that they're on the books as loans is to secure that perpetual affordability. And if for some reason we were no longer able to operate this project as affordable housing with the income restrictions, that loan would need to be repaid by whatever entity, for-profit entity, was going to take it over and operate it as housing.
Okay.
Samantha, since this is a public forum, can you just do a brief overview for everyone that's on this evening if they're interested? Just as you said, the select board, you've presented before us before and we're familiar with the project, but for those who aren't, just like the elevator pitch, I guess.
Yes, and I'm trying to find the right. I wanted to just pull up this document It's not giving me that choice.
Samantha, do you want me to talk while you look for a visual?
Sure, Elisa. Yeah, if you want to introduce yourself, I think you've been with the select board less than I have.
Sure. I'm Elise Schanbacher. I'm the executive director of the Addison County Community Trust. The Firehouse Apartments development is a proposed 20-unit development, a mix of townhome style flats, as well as a couple of duplexes. As was mentioned, they are planned to be mixed income, serving households up to 120% of area median income. That's about, for a family of 4, that's about $100,000. A typical household for the units that are restricted to 60% AMI might be earning closer to $35,000 a year or less if they have rental assistance. So it should be a good span of income mixes. Evernorth and ACCT are the 2 partners in the project. And ACCT would plan to take over the property management once the development is built out. What did
Thank
I
you.
miss?
I think the one thing in terms of the range of households being served by this project, there are 4 units dedicated to homeless or households at risk of homelessness. So that, you know, likely those folks would have a voucher that they would bring with them to cover the rent, but just wanted to make sure people understood that this project, like I think almost every affordable housing project funded in the state of Vermont, does have some of those units set aside. We have a governor and a state legislator that's really focused on addressing our homelessness issue in the state. And so this project will contribute to that. The image that you see up on the screen, you can see the firehouse where we heard about all those awards going out earlier, which is awesome, at the bottom here. And the rest, what you see, people are familiar with the project that Kevin Harper was proposing for the site. It's very similar. It's actually less development, square footage footprint wise, because we're able to build smaller rental units and leave this larger open space as green space. So these flats that go along Firehouse Drive have a real presence on the street. They have front porches and front doors for everyone. The upstairs units are access. Folks have access to their unit through a back door. So everyone does have their own door, which I know is a big deal for a lot of people. And then the 2 duplexes back here, again, very similar to what had been designed in the original proposal by Kevin Harper that he just was not able to build for cost reasons given rising construction prices. And in this green space here, there had originally been some single family homes. We've eliminated those. We've actually pushed out, this is a little bit of an older rendering, but we're anticipating having a pavilion, community gardens, and a play space out in this green space that's also accessible to the public from the pedestrian trail that cuts across the corner of this site, and are really excited about that opportunity to allow for integration with the community and have that, you know, if you're on that trail, to be able to just sit down on a bench before you drop down over the cliff there down to the river.
Brad had a question based on taxes, and if I'm correct in what you told us last time, it's based on the income of the people living there. It's a prorated rate based on the income of the people that are occupying the apartments.
It's not based on the income that are occupying the apartments. It is, the taxes will be paid based on, I always forget, at least I don't know if you remember, it's act, you know, we have a state statute that dictates how property taxes are assessed for affordable housing, and it does have to do based on the overall income of the property.
Yeah, it's Act 68, I believe.
Thank you.
I'm trying to think, the only one else that we were just doing 2022 budgets in our office today, and we didn't do Verdun's community apartments, but we did just do McKnight Lane in Waltham, which is 14 units, and the annual taxes are about $16,000. So I don't know exactly how Bristol compares to Waltham, but
I think we have estimated, between $15,000 and $20,000 of annual property taxes. But again, it's not something that we decide. It's based on statute.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a, Peeker, this is Brett. I have a question not related to taxes, but related to this letter I'm looking at dated July 15th regarding the diesel fuel tank at the fire station and the either updating it to a compliant tank or moving it to a new location. So I'd like to have that conversation.
Sure. Yep. That was something. So in order to receive federal funding, the project needs to go through a process called environmental review. And we have a consultant that does us, and there's all these things that they check. Right now, the existing fuel tank that serves a fire station is too close, like it's in a blast zone for the housing. So the solution for that is to replace it with this special double-walled tank, which we would do at our cost as the project. So as soon as we get this final piece of funding, we would coordinate. We're assuming that that's preferable to moving it to the other end of the parking lot, but it's a pretty easy fix for us to replace that with a special double-walled tank, and that addresses that issue.
That absolutely does address that issue. That was my question, was where was the funding going to come from to do this? Moving it to a new location is really not an option, as it's in that specific location, as we have a drive-through fire station, and as those large vehicles return, that's where they fuel up. So if the project's covering the cost of the double-wall tank, that's great news, as it'll allow us to use our existing concrete pad. No further questions.
Great. Yep. We've got it in our budget.
Excellent.
So what's you mentioned anticipated start date if everything goes to plan?
Yep. So I believe if everything keeps ticking along, we hope to be breaking ground at the end of March. I mean, it's a little bit dependent on, we don't want to spend money heating the ground to break it. So it's a little bit dependent on that. But right now we're looking at an end of March construction start.
And then what's the anticipated construction time?
10 to 12 months. So, I would say in March of 2023, we would hope to be inviting new families and residents into these homes.
Fantastic.
We're very excited to see that work is underway on the infrastructure. Looks great. Looks busy.
One more question. I saw that there in your description, you were saying 3 or 4 units would be left for homeless availability. Is that correct? Is that what I read right? And how do you gauge that? Do you leave them empty?
So we have a memorandum of understanding with John Graham Housing and Services for them to refer unhoused clients that they're serving, and then also provide follow-on services so that people can continue to receive support when they're in housing. We also have the plans call for a property management site office up there, as well as a community space. So we certainly intend to have a presence and be providing a lot of community infrastructure and a supportive environment for folks.
So when they come in that aspect, how long do they stay? Is that something that you?
It's permanent housing. It's not transitional housing. So they would sign a lease like any other tenant and be welcome to stay as long as they abided by the lease.
Other questions? What else do we need to do, Valerie?
So one of the other items on this agenda item is adoption or approval of the resolution to authorize the application and to designate a local representative, which I propose would be myself. And there's a resolution proposed to do that.
So is it,
Need I can put that on the screen, but it's also online.
the resolution that was online, that's the one you're talking about,
Yeah.
right?
Correct.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the resolution authorizing the submission of the application and designate Valerie as the duly authorized town official.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your hand. Aye. Opposed? Nay. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much again for all of your support of this project. It's really exciting.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
And you'll be in the DRB meeting tomorrow, is that correct? I
Yes,
understand
but we're third on the agenda, so bring your snacks if you're planning on attending. We'd love to have you there.
Excellent.
All righty. Thank you.
Thanks, Samantha. Thank you.
All right, next up, Lincoln Road intersection, Bartlett's Falls parking study, final report and recommendations. And we'll go through the report and then we'll do our comments.
And just to follow up, this is a follow-up to the special meeting the select board had on August 16th, where the preliminary report was presented. And since then, the engineering team has put out a public survey and received a pretty remarkable response to that survey. And so much of tonight's presentation will focus on that new information and just to kind of summarize the conclusion and next steps.
Great, thanks Valerie. So I'm Jenny Austin from Du Bois & King. We're the engineering consulting firm that's working on this study that's funded, working with the town and the Addison County Regional Planning Commission. Mike Winslow, who I believe is on the call, sort of the grantor of the funds for this project. So these are kind of a summary of the steps we'll be talking about. I recognize some of you from the meeting in August. You'll see that some of this is will look familiar, and then a lot of the new information focuses on the survey and a little bit more information on the evaluation of the alternatives. So project overview, the project goal. This is a scoping study report looking at 3 focus areas that were identified by the town in their request for proposal. The 3 focus areas: number 1, priority as identified in the RFP by the town, is the Vermont 116 and Lincoln Road intersection. And in the RFP was pretty specific about what the big concerns are at each of these locations. For this one, the concern was a limited sight distance due to the guardrail primarily on the bridge. Number 2 being overflow parking on Lincoln Road, folks using parking in the little pull-off area and also along the road to access Bartlett Falls. And number 3, the steep slope of the Briggs Hill intersection approaching Lincoln. Existing conditions, sort of an overview, and again, some of this will look familiar to those that were here last time. Just kind of did a generic overview of the project area, the speed limits, 40 miles per hour on 116 and 35 on Lincoln and Briggs. Speed data is something that we talked about at the last meeting. We didn't have that at the alternatives presentation meeting, and we got some information from the Regional Planning Commission on speed data, and they actually so we had 2015 and 2017 data from VTrans, sort of coincidentally to our time frame. VTrans had went out to get speed data. Unfortunately, there's some sort of glitch, so we didn't get any updated information on. So there's 2 different speed spots that they looked at. One of them was west of the intersection, about 0.4 miles, and the other one was east, close to a mile from the intersection. Those are the closest data that we have. So the 85th percentile speed west of the intersection, so somewhere around here on the screen, was 43 miles per hour. So for every 100 vehicles, 85 vehicles were traveling at 43 or lower. East of the intersection, so it's about 0.9 miles to the east. Another thing to note here, so the 85th percentile is found to be 59 miles per hour, and the speed limits changes between the intersection and that location to 50 miles per hour. So we're not exactly looking at apples to apples here because it is a different speed limit, but that's the data that we have for that. And then we show just kind of generic traffic volumes on the road, 116. So the way V-Trans breaks down their traffic data, usually between certain intersection points, and it just happens to be that the break in their data for 116 to the west is 4,920. So on average, that's the number of vehicles that pass by any given point in that location. And then to the east is 3,750. And then on Lincoln Road was 1887. We do have 2020 traffic data, but those volumes are actually lower, about 15%, likely due to COVID. It's sort of a statewide trend of what the traffic volumes were. Site distance review, we talked about this last time. So it's, went out in the field and looked at, followed standard methodology for, field measuring what the sight line is. The primary concern here is looking to the west. We did, look to the east and, met the sight distance criteria for that. So the criteria in sort of the engineering guidelines that give you what sight distance should be, the criteria is based on the design speed, which you typically use the speed limit for that. So initially, as I showed last time, the design speed of 40 miles per hour. So this red line is what the available sight distance is, and it meets the stopping sight distance criteria, but it doesn't quite meet the intersection sight criteria. And we talked last time, I know there's some concern about the speeds of vehicles. So we are showing here what the sight distance would be if you were using 35 miles per hour, then the sight distance would be met. So basically the idea is, when you're traveling slower, it takes less time to come to a complete stop. And then, so obviously since the intersection sight distance criteria isn't being met for 40, it's not going to be met for 45, and it's a little bit further that it would be to meet the 45. And on the previous slide showed the 85th percentile in this direction. I don't know where exactly that point would be 43 miles per hour. Typically we use, for analysis, use a design speed, but I know folks last time were curious what that would be with what the speed data that we have is. And then we take a look at just kind of a crash data review. So V-Trans has a high crash location report that we take a look at. It's not something that they update every year. So the last high crash location report was in 2012 to 2016, and this was not considered a high crash location, so it doesn't give the data in that report. So we always take a look at what the latest available data is. So for this, we looked at 2016 to 2020. And so looking at the intersection, there were 8 total crashes, so between 2016 and 2020. And of course, these are only reported crashes. So, there could be unreported crashes that we really can't quantify because we don't have that data. So using the data that we do have available, and just kind of some fun facts of those crashes. One was a rear end forward left turn and throughs, 2 single vehicle crashes, and one was listed as unknown. I actually had one that was involving a moose. The V-Trans data shows a lot of different data that you can look at. One was during snowy conditions. So kind of circling back to the high crash location report. So one of the criteria in order to be a high crash location, you have to have 5 crashes within a 5-year period, and also actual rate to critical rate is what they calculated as. So basically it comes up with a magic number ratio based on some equations and formulas based on the ADT and the number of years and however many crashes. And the sort of the magic number that came up for this intersection was 1.02. So using this, the 16 to 20 data, it just barely met, it did meet the threshold for being a high crash location. So there's a little bit of, there's some talk about this last time in terms of what, I think the question was asked what VTrans does if it's considered a high crash location. There's quite a, I don't know how many intersections are considered high crash locations, but the top 50 of the state usually, get bumped up into a special program where they look at those intersections and, try to figure out what can be done there. Typically, there's a lot that probably just barely meet the threshold, so they don't quite get that attention at the state level. We do kind of a cursory environmental review just to see what pops up. Some of the common ones that can pop up sometimes are, wetlands or floodplains. There's nothing too significant in this project area. There is, I'm not a specialist in environmental, but the habitat block does show up as one item. I ran that through some people that are more familiar with those, and it's not necessarily a red flag. Sometimes it depends on the weighting, how significant it is, and sometimes, there are these two blocks here, but they're already, kind of disconnected by the roadway, but nothing too significant. Prime soils, but those pretty much pop up on any area. I'm gonna come up with those. So the project alternatives, as I mentioned earlier, we broke them down into 3 focus areas. The goals for each focus area were different, so we came up with different alternatives to meet what the specific concerns were that were identified by the town, and also trying to come up with some short-term and long-term measures with wide range of cost ranges, understanding that something that's pretty expensive might not be able to be done right away, but there might be some other lower cost alternatives that might see how those works. We didn't get into it last time, but there's a few assumptions that we had made when we were coming up with our alternatives, and some of these we talked about last time. So I know there's a lot of discussion. The first one talks about the Vermont 116 bridge, and we understand that that's a concern with the guardrail. That's really what's causing the site limitations here. So going into coming up with all our alternatives, so the state, when they had designed that bridge, they kind of put it where the best location for the bridge was, not necessarily, I was involved with the bridge, but, they don't always, I think, that was their primary goal, and, subsurface, they look at, what kind of soils there are, what sort of ledge there are. So our project is kind of independent of the guardrail, understanding that the guardrail is a concern. I know there were questions about whether the height of the guardrail could be reduced, or, the spacing between the bars. But really the guardrail, it needs to meet the state standards for safety purposes. So we're assuming that one of the alternatives would not be decreasing the height, because that wouldn't meet, the crash safety guidelines. The second one, there's a little bit of discussion in the kickoff meeting with Valerie and Mike about the grade of Lincoln Road, and I think it had been discussed in the past whether we could raise the grade of Lincoln Road at the intersection. So we took we didn't have topo survey, but used LiDAR to come up with some large scale contours to see generically what it looks like there in the current slope approaching the intersection matches the state standard, which it sounds like it was reconstructed when the bridge was put in, so that kind of makes sense why it is how it is because that's what the V-Trans standard is for approaches. And then the third one has to do with basically traffic speeds along 116. We talked about that a little bit last time. And I talked to Valerie and Mike after the meeting and kind of came to the conclusion that traffic calming along 116 is that it is related to sight lines and sight speeds, but kind of outside of the scope of this project. And we also talked about, I didn't include on here, but speed limits. You know, there's a discussion about whether the speed limit could be lowered. And typically if, in terms of V-Trans, when they're looking, since this is a state road, when they're looking at, you know, a town's request to lower a speed limit, they would actually use the 85th percentile speed and base it off of that and not, you know, I understand that, you know, doesn't make complete sense to some people, but that's, you know, how they gauge that. So getting into the alternatives, so nothing much has changed the last time. There's a little bit of tweaking. So just go to the first one. So 1A, so we're calling, so 116 and Lincoln Road, we're calling focus area 1. The first alternative is install what's called intersection conflict warning signage. So not familiar if there's any of these in Vermont. It's somewhat of a newer technology. From my understanding, from speaking with one of the manufacturers, it is MUTCD compliant, which is a plus, but it would be something that if the town wanted to pursue, that it would need state approval of, since it is on a state road. So basically, you see up in the corner a little bit here, what it would be is installing a sign inside each of where these black boxes are, and they'd basically be radar. So it would kind of, you know, the intent would be if there's a vehicle stopped at Lincoln Road, that the stop sign would flash when there's a car at the other side, so they kind of talk to each other. There was discussion about potentially moving the Lincoln Road sign across the road, which could be done. There's a couple caveats with that. One is that if the sign did want it, if you did want, I know that it's not really the whole intent, but then this sign wouldn't flash because the sign wouldn't be, or the vehicle wouldn't be right at that sign. And another reason it's at this side is one of the other alternatives is the traffic mirror, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which would be on the other side of the road. So it's our opinion that you wouldn't want too much going on right there across the road where it could, you know, too many signs in one location there. And again, this is just the scoping level. So, you know, if the town wanted to pursue, you know, putting it at a different location, this isn't anything set in stone here. This is just, you know, big picture scoping level. We haven't gotten into any design here. The second one is reviewing the stop bar location. So right now, so this first picture here is taken at the stop sign, and the stop sign and stop bar are at different locations. Each really have their pros and cons. So if you're standing at the stop sign, you can see, you can kind of see the progression here. You can't see one that's, say, midpoint on the bridge here if you're stopped at the stop sign. But then if you're at the stop bar, you can see along the bridge better, but you can't see further, which in terms of sight distance, you're really looking at getting that full sight line there. So the idea of, and not saying that it, you know, we haven't concluded what the sight distance would be if you did move it, but there could be that potential that, because right here, you can't see on the bridge, and right here you can't see as far back. So potentially there could be a location in the middle where you might kind of be a little bit of a happy medium of the two. Fortunately, you're not going to get, it's not going to increase your sight lines, but it's our understanding that one of the concerns is not being able to see vehicles that are on the bridge. So there might be the opportunity there. Again, it's not going to solve the problems, but might be a kind of a balancing of the sight distance issues.
Okay, let me just ask our question. Who's in charge of the stop bar on that road? Is that the state or is that us? Because I was gonna say it's really faded, so that I don't think people see it very well.
Yeah, well, I'm waiting for 10 pounds of paint that I've already ordered.
Okay.
And then the next one, talked about a little bit, would be putting a traffic mirror, so basically across the intersection of Lincoln Road. Again, you're not going to increase your sight lines with this, but the idea is to, improve it as best as you can, being able to see what's coming.
And what direction would that mirror face? So if you're coming down Lincoln Road, it would be across facing the car?
The idea would be across the road, but you would have to angle it.
Okay.
You would have to angle it so that you can see on the bridge.
Well, you'd both be able, you'd have to be able to angle it enough that you could see that, and then the person in the car on Lincoln Road would be able to see.
Yeah, you definitely want to, confirm the placement, because otherwise it wouldn't work if you just put it straight towards Lincoln. And then 1D, which is obviously the most expensive, would be, so if we can't move the guardrail to improve the sight lines, if you moved the intersection, if you realigned Lincoln Road to a point where that it would meet the intersection sight distance, then you would have adequate sight distance. One, you're trading a little bit, you're trading issues. You might be improving the sight distance, but you would also be, so as you all know, Briggs is pretty steep. So by realigning it, again, this isn't actual topo, but just kind of generic LiDAR data, you'd still be pretty steep coming up this way. So you'd sort of be trading your sight distance concern for having a steep slope on Lincoln. And then 1E, this is actually one that we added after the last meeting, something that we talked about, signalizing the intersection. So what we did for that is typically when the state looks at whether to signalize an intersection or not, there's signal warrant analyses in the MUTCD, the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, kind of the guidelines for signs and signals. So we evaluated the latest turning movement count we had was 2014 and projected the traffic volumes to 2021 and determined that the signal warrant criteria was not met. And there's different, there's various warrants that get looked at. So we projected data, and then there's the 8-hour vehicular volume, 4-hour peak hour pedestrian and crash warrants. And then there's other warrants that weren't applicable for this intersection.
You're talking, when you say signal, you're talking about actual light, putting up a light there?
Correct, yeah. We talked a little bit about a beacon, since none of the, sometimes, if like the peak hour warrant might be met, might look at that. But since none of the warrants were met, we didn't look at that any further. So those were all the intersections for the alternatives for the intersection. The second focus area was the parking concerns along Lincoln Road, and the 2 or 3 we looked at. The first one is, so right now there's a sign somewhere up here that says no parking on pavement 1 mile or something like that, and then I believe there's one later on as well. So the first alternative would be adding more no parking signage, just to kind of defer folks from parking along there. The second alternative, so kind of backing up, would be these two blue areas, which are, these are not topo again, but generically a couple places where it looks like you might be able to fit in some parking areas to kind of encourage folks where there is adequate width for parking to park there instead of along the road where there's not adequate width. And then we had just looked at these two, but obviously the town could look at if there's any further along as well. And then the third one we looked at would be, there's this existing pull-off area. It's gravel, there's a lot of rocks. It's a big area, but it's not really maximized for parking. So this alternative would be a paved parking area along here. There's some quite a bit of grade change and a lot of ledge there. So this is, scoping level. We're assuming it would probably need a retaining wall there. If this was something the town wanted to go for, then need to be a little bit more, topo to see what that would look like in terms of, how tall that would be. Right now, we're just really approximating it. But the goal here would be to optimize the off-road parking to encourage people to park here instead of along the road.
In that diagram, is that the number of parking spaces you think you could get in there, or is that just?
And is that in your rendition? She's saying, is that the number of parking spaces?
Yeah, I think it was 24.
Okay.
I think is what it was. Yeah, so those would be, a standard. It's shown as a standard parking stall width there. And then, so Briggs Hill is the third one. It's very steep, as you folks know. It was the primary concern of this. One thing that we initially thought about on paper without having seen the site or the contours. Typically it'd be really nice if we could just square it off here and everybody would be happy. But the grades right now, I think it's 15%, I think is the steepest. And so it would be even, it would be very, very steep. We didn't even, draw what that line would be because it would be very steep. So we haven't included that as an alternative. So our two alternatives would be, one would be closing, or 3A we show is closing the west end in the winter time. Since the main issue with this, the slope and just thinking about, ice and snow in the winter time. In our last meeting, we had closed a lot longer of a length, and then it was brought to our attention that there's some sort of development or yurt or something that is planned to be going up there, so it really wouldn't make sense. Unfortunately, that really lessens, it's not much of a length that it would be less that would be closed. And then the yellow piece here would be a turnaround. And then 3B would be to close the entirety of this little section here. So 3A would just be close it during winter, you put some barricades up. And 3B would be to actually close that piece so that people didn't have to use the steep slope there.
I got a question.
Yeah.
How many times have you driven down that hill?
Probably 3 times.
3 times, yeah. There's some people that live up there do that in one day,
Yeah.
or more.
Oh, yeah, if you live
But
there.
yet you guys come up with an alternative to close Briggs Hill in the wintertime. I've lived there for 73 years.
Well, you'll
More
see,
than anybody else has.
you'll see later on that it's
And
not.
it's just crazy.
You'll see later on that it's not a popular alternative, but it is something, we don't want to come here with nothing, so it is, an alternative versus, if this slope, if you did just do a T here, it would be over 20-25% probably, which is unrealistic. So we will talk about that. And then as part of our evaluations, of course, we looked at the cost estimate. We talked about this a little bit last time and then kind of went back and tweaked some of the alternatives. So we won't go into all of them, but you'll see the orangish color there just kind of shows what the scale of the cost would be for each alternative. Obviously 1D, the realignment of the road, would be very expensive. The 2C, the definition of parking area, so that's the one with the pull-off. One of the big expenses there would be assuming that a retaining wall would be needed, and then a lot of them are sort of some low cost alternatives, some of the signage, for example. And then it's hard to see here, but as part of our report, we'll put together an evaluation matrix. So talk about some different categories per se in the evaluation. So the cost, the level of meeting, the goal, the roadway or land use impacts, environmental, cultural, permitting, and community support. And we'll get into the community support in a little bit when we talk about the survey. So a lot of these are low cost with not a lot of environmental footprint. So a lot of these don't, have a lot of permit type of things on here. Obviously the realignment of the road has the most impact. So the community survey, this is the section that's new since the last meeting. I'm not sure exactly all the places that Valerie posted, but she definitely did a good job. We had 136 responses, which I think is pretty good. It was out, I forget exactly how long, Valerie, but maybe a couple weeks or so, plus or minus. And 60% lived in Bristol, 31% lived in Lincoln, and 9% lived in other. 71% drives through the 116 intersection at least 2 to 3 times a week. Close to 60% drives through the Briggs intersection. 86% frequently witness vehicles parking along Lincoln Road, and concern level of steep slope. That was pretty varied. There was 47 that had no or slight concern, 14% were neutral, and 38% were concerned and very concerned regarding the steep slope. So we'll get into some of the alternative results, but we have the full, I'm not sure how many of you took the survey, but we have the full breakdown of what all the answers are, and those will be in the report if anyone's interested. You can't really see that very well. So these are the main alternative preference questions. Can everybody see that? I can pull up.
Can't read it, you can see the
Yeah,
bars, just can't.
pull up something different. A little bit better. So focus area 1, so the questions were basically gauging response request, and the options were strongly against, neutral, strongly, support, or support. So we have the data shown a couple different ways, but try and simplify things a little bit. The pink shows strongly against or against, yellow is neutral, and green is support or strongly support. So for 1A, you'll see that the ones that have the most support are the signage, the reduced stop bar, and the traffic mirror. All have pretty strong support. focus area 2, they all seem to have pretty good support. The highest one was the designated parking areas along Lincoln Road. So that was the one where there were the 2 blue sections, also less costly than sort of full definition of the parking area. There was pretty good consensus that folks wanted to do something about that, about this focus area. It has for the do nothing alternative, which I failed to mention earlier. So we show alternatives for each of the 3 sections, but for purposes of the report, each focus area, we also include a no-build alternative, assuming that, you know, may not end up wanting to do something at one of the potential areas. So this one, there's pretty general consensus about wanting to do something about that location, and kind of going back to the first focus area was pretty similar. And focus area 3, for Briggs Hill, so you'll see there's pretty strong in favor of against for both the winter, pretty strong against in the winter, and even more so against for completely closing the west end. There was still some kind of, you always sometimes get some kind of contradictory information because it does show for the do nothing alternative, there's still a fair amount in those 2 categories.
But that's a pretty high number of people who don't want to do anything, right? That's the green bar?
It is, yeah, it's still the highest, yeah, definitely. I don't have the percentages. I kind of went back and forth on putting what the percentages were in each column, but also trying to balance that with too much information. But all of that actually does show up on this one, but didn't show up in the slides.
Or do nothing because there wasn't an option that they liked.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. There's one, in terms of the comments, it wasn't something that we had looked at because it wasn't part of the original concern, but there were several comments in the survey about the stop sign itself on Lincoln coming up to Briggs. So it's not included here because it wasn't an official alternative that met what we were looking at, but we were going to include it in our report to show concern about that stop sign. That there, I don't remember how many, but there were probably several people that had commented on that. And then there's a question about what alternatives people supported, and kind of selecting all the ones that applied. So you could select as many or as few that you supported as you wanted. And the goal here is to kind of try and rank what the thoughts were on the different alternatives, what support was. So for example, 2B, the designated parking areas along Lincoln Road. So 41% of people that filled out the survey supported that specific alternative. Reviewing the stop bar location, I think we talked about that earlier, that was another popular one. And new no parking signage. So the one in green just represent kind of the most popular responses. So at least one in 3 people included that they supported one of those. And then I won't list them out, read them all out, but that just kind of shows the scale. And the 3 with the green arrows are the ones, no improvements related to Briggs Road up here. So you can see another indicator that one, that's a closing west end of Briggs Hill Road wasn't as popular, whereas no improvements to parking along Lincoln or Lincoln Road were kind of further down the list. And there's a lot on this and you can't really read everything, so I won't get into detail. So one of the questions was ranking the alternatives that they did support. So obviously it could vary, way past 4, but this just shows, kind of looking at the top ranked alternatives, some kind of generic ranking observations. Responders were 3 times more likely to rank focus area 1 alternative as their top priority. So that would be the 116 intersection. The alternative with the highest number of number 1 rankings was reviewing the stop bar location. And then looking at the top 3 ranking votes, just adding those up together kind of to get an idea of the most popular alternatives. Was reviewing the stop bar, parking along Lincoln, and the intersection conflict warning signage. There are 41, so kind of talked earlier about the Briggs Hill alternatives were kind of low on folks' popularity list. There are 41 responses that supported one or both of the alternatives, but only 5 of them ranked a Briggs Hill improvement as their number 1 choice. And there'll be more detailed information in the report, but this kind of hopes to give kind of a flavor of the survey. So that's where we are right now. So this is the public informational meeting, and we're also in the process of finalizing the scoping report. And I just added on here and talked a little bit about, there's other concerns in the project area that weren't part of the project, mostly based on the focus intent in the RFP, but concerns that have been mentioned at meetings and as well as in the survey that will be, including a section in the report about those. One of them, like the stop bar on Lincoln coming up to Briggs, that I don't remember how many people had commented on that. And it's also, if that was something that was being looked at, there probably would have been more people that had agreed with that, but it's, just people that were thinking of it during the survey that had commented on it. So that was something that.
You're talking about the stop bar on Briggs Hill, not the stop sign, the stop bar on Briggs Hill.
I think the intent would be actually this photo right here, people not stopping on Lincoln Road at Briggs. There is, I apologize, I don't remember what the exact sign is. I believe there's probably a stop ahead, but it is confusing because some people may think, oh, they're talking about 116, they don't realize. So there could be.
People don't think.
Yeah. Especially if you're not from there and you think, oh, I'm traveling through, I'm almost, in your head, you're thinking, oh, that's for 116. So, I don't know what the signage would look like. Maybe there could be, there's kind of a cross intersection signage. Maybe there's one that has 2 of them, that would tell people there's 2 intersections, not just one, that type of thing.
Well, if the stop signs don't tell you you're supposed to stop, another sign telling you there's 2 stop signs.
Yeah.
Flashing lights up there or something.
Yeah, there is a compliance issue there.
There's at least 2 or 3 warning things coming down out of Lincoln before you even get to their stop sign that tells you stop ahead. That doesn't mean stop ahead out at 116. It means stop at the bottom of Briggs Hill Road in Lincoln Road. It doesn't mean out at 116. And I'm not telling you, 90-something% of the people coming out of Lincoln do not stop for the stop sign. And some of them don't even slow down to the speed limit and go right through it. I had 2 confrontations in one day a week ago. And
Somebody suggested that at some point there wasn't a stop sign there.
No,
There used to be.
There didn't used to be when the state realigned the at certain hours of the day, if there's enough people coming down out of Lincoln that if you want to make Briggs Hill, you back traffic before the stop sign was there, you back traffic out onto 116.
Yeah.
And that's the reason the stop sign was put there.
Well, it was put there when the temporary bridge was north, on the upside river of the bridge there's now, it was real close to that intersection. That's why they put it there. I still wonder if the sign came down and it was a sign there that said yield to left turning Briggs Hill traffic. So if Brian or family or anybody's got their blinker on, yield to them.
If they don't stop for a stop sign, they're not gonna yield to the yield sign.
Are you talking about the stop sign coming out of Lincoln at the bottom of the hill? Those stop signs were put there.
That one right there, that one not the.
Because in order to stop traffic from backing out onto 116, no?
You remember when the bridges went out? And they put in a temporary bridge?
Mhm.
The reason they put those stop signs out of Lincoln was to stop traffic, so when tractor trailers came across the temporary bridge to make the swing toward Lincoln, so people could stop and they would give them room to make the thing. That's why the stop sign.
That's when they initially put it up, but they didn't
They
take it
left
down
them there
because of that.
because
Left them there. You know, one alternative, I lived there up on the hill longer, as I just said, and you guys that know me know that. Longer than anybody else up there now, up there living. Brian, my son, who was thinking about coming, he's probably lived the next the longest, along with Dr. Clark, who's about 50 years too. Pam has lived up there, since we've been married 50-something years. But anyway, what I'm getting at is in the old days, there was no stop signs coming out of Lincoln. They were put there when that temporary bridge was put across when the other bridges went out. So Brian suggested, one of his thoughts, we've been racking our brains for a long time because he's had consultations with people coming out of Lincoln and stuff too. And I was right behind him one day when his fiance and him were in the car with their young son. And I saw the guy coming out. I figured Brian had given him some lip because they stopped and pull in front, and I pull right in front with my dump truck too, so he couldn't get by. And the guy in Lincoln, coming out of Lincoln, leaned right out the window and gave him the finger and stuff. So that was just a mild confrontation, kind of instead of some of the ones he's had and I've had. So he's come up with an alternative, just like in the old days. Take the stop signs down coming out of Lincoln. Don't even have stop signs there. Only time the people coming out of Lincoln would have to stop is when they get to 116. That's the way it always was. The people coming off Briggs Hill always were used to that. We have to look. Now you have to look because they're supposed to stop, but they don't stop. So if we knew they weren't going to stop anyway, the problem isn't the people coming off Briggs Hill, the people coming out of Lincoln.
Well, if you're on Briggs Hill, you have to stop. You can't.
And I'll tell you one more quick thing, a story to go along with that, talking about confrontations and hearing different excuses why they don't stop for stop signs. This was a couple years ago. I got the ball on the hill. And I had the dump truck loaded with wood getting ready to deliver. Here comes this car out of Lincoln, happened to be Massachusetts plates on it. Two young females in the car. I don't mean a high school kid, probably in their 20s or 30s, whatever. I didn't say anything. They went through. I pulled in behind them. They made a mistake of pulling up in the Charlotte parking lot instead of just going through town. I pulled right up inside. They parked on the left side where the two parking things are in the Charlotte parking lot like this. Stop right here, and I pulled right up beside them, looking down in the car. Passenger had the window open, and I said, "Did you girls just come out of Lincoln?" "Yes, we did." I said, "How come you didn't stop for that stop sign?" The passenger girl says, "She's not from around here." I said, "Well, the last I knew, SPOP means the same in all 50 of our freaking states." I had a few expletives on top of that. I thought, yeah, that's a real good one.
Quick suggestion that if you took down the vegetation between the two roads as they converge, people coming down Briggs Hill would have a better way of seeing whether there's somebody coming up at the stop sign.
Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, really a question from the person from Du Bois and King. It seems to me that at the intersection of Lincoln Road and 116, there is an area to the east of there that's not used, it's flat, and that you could move that intersection another 20 or 30 feet. That wouldn't help you with the long line of sight issue, but it would help you see the cars that are on the bridge. And it seems that that's the problem most people have, is not being able to see people on the bridge because they get lost in that curve. So I'm wondering if that's something that could be explored. The second thing is there is confusion because there are 2 stop signs. And in fact, that last picture that you showed, you come around that bend and you're confronted with actually 4 stop signs, and it's totally confusing. So I'm wondering if you couldn't replace one of those stop signs with a blinking light, and so that people would see there's a stop sign, and then they would differentiate that from the blinking light.
Yeah, in terms of the first one, moving the intersection slightly to the east, we talked about that a little bit last time. We didn't go into detail. The goal of this alternative would be to present something that met the site distance criteria, but that is definitely, we're going to include into the report. You can really do any variation of any of these alternatives, and that would be one that could be explored.
Yeah, one of the issues with shoving that to the east is the fact that, trucks making that corner. It's either gonna be an extremely wide intersection and people are gonna crowd it to the west because they're going west, or you're not gonna be able to make that corner,
Coming off the bridge.
with a truck or a fire truck or a plow truck. We did discuss that a fair amount at the last meeting.
Yeah, I forgot about that comment. And in terms of the stop sign and the blinking light, as I mentioned earlier, that wasn't one of the focuses of this study, but it's definitely something that's come about through this survey, and we'll include a section in the report about, some options that could be done there as well.
Yeah, I'm not even sure you would take the stop sign down, maybe just add the blinking flashing light there.
Right.
Well, I've always thought, like Brian said, if those 2 came down, but there was a sign there and a sign a little bit further up towards Bartlett's that says, northbound traffic, yield to left turning traffic on Briggs Hill. So with Brian or anybody, so that traffic doesn't go back out on the 116. If he's sitting there waiting and it's in the morning and people are coming in, okay, I saw the sign, I gotta yield to let you know.
But if they don't stop for the stop sign, Joel, they're not gonna yield to somebody crossing.
No. I'd rather have a yield sign. We just thought we would take the signs down.
That stop sign makes it easier for us to get up on there in the wintertime to plow. If we get up there right where the morning traffic goes through, and you could have them cars all the way backed up to the parking line, we're not gonna be able to get on Briggs Hill to plow.
Unless somebody's nice enough.
To let you through. Being with a stop sign, they have to stop so we can make the turn.
No, they're supposed to stop.
They don't have to stop.
Well,
I know what you mean, yeah. I know what you mean, but they don't do it.
No.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
I never liked those stop sign there.
I mean, I've had them come down through at 35 miles an hour and come right, and I've had a dump truck and all the way have my blinker on to go up the hill, and they go right around me toward the upper part. Don't even slow down.
Yeah. Well, they're in a bigger hurry than you.
Yeah, we'll definitely include this section. There's definitely some different signage versus no signage opportunities there.
Ron LaRose comment on the safety. When they designed the bridge, the railing had to be a certain height because of traffic accident, hold the vehicle on the bridge. Obviously, they never took into account the blindness they were creating of that road. They were only focused on the bridge going around that slight bend there. So, what weighs more, the safety of the vehicles coming down Lincoln Road, or the vehicles that might go over the bridge if the railing was down, say, a foot?
Right.
For a little bit of history, Ron, the bridge was supposed to be shorter, but they hit fissures in the ledge and they extended the bridge, which in turn extended the guardrail. Because originally it was back further.
Yeah.
And because they had to meet the existing steel that they had, it extended that curve, and that's what because right after the bridge was built, we had this concern and we had a meeting up there. We're
So the railing has to go the length of the bridge.
yes. And we discussed setting the railing back and all of that, and they really didn't see it as a problem. They stood there and said, if you come all the way out to the stop bar where you're supposed to, it meets
Right.
everything. The state
They
said,
stood there,
yeah,
but they're not sitting there.
yeah.
No, you know what I do? When I come down the hill, as I was telling Mary the other day, when I come down the hill and I'm coming toward Bristol, which is 90% of the time, instead of going the other way, I pull over almost like I am going to go towards Starksville. But I have my left blinker on, so that people behind me know that you're going to turn left to go to Bristol. And if you pull it out far enough so you see across the bridge, you still aren't in the road and you can see perfectly. If people just use their head a little bit, they've driven and think the bridge is not a problem. Curvature of the bridge is not a problem. It's not a problem. Some people think it is. Just try the alternative that I just suggested and see if it works for you. It might not work for everybody. I'm not saying
That's what I do.
it should.
Yeah, that's what I
It
do.
should.
Well, I think part of what Paul says is, might be the alternative, and what you say, shove that road, if we put a couple more feet of road there and shove the line over, it's gonna give the trucks a little more room and not create such a wide intersection that, but people have gotta be trained to do what you do coming down out of there. They've gotta stay to the right. If you give them more road.
If you put the yellow line, if you move the yellow line over, move the yellow line over, so that, and then they stay to this side of it.
But he's talking about widen it to the right, at the bottom of the hill, and when you get out to 116, widen it where some people pull off like state trooper, when I just had a motorcycle accident there a couple of days ago. When I got down the bottom of the hill, the state trooper was parked there. They could move that over some more toward that ledge that's there, a little like, that would make perfectly sense too, and move the line there too. And it would get, because people don't take into consideration, I try to always look ahead to see if somebody like the town truck, if they're plowing or whatever, or a trailer, tractor trailer making that corner, you've gotta give them some room, people. Just use your head a little bit when you're coming down those places. Try to look ahead a little bit. It doesn't take rocket science. And just, if you see a big rig coming, just know that maybe they're give them some room.
There's a note in the chat from Matt Sharp. Can a sidewalk be added to the side of the bridge that would widen the bridge and move the guardrail out and allow good sight?
Well, I don't think the state would ever even consider it, but.
I asked last meeting, had we looked into the cables instead of those wide bars around the rail?
Yeah.
Yeah, I checked.
Yeah, why not the cables like the cables on the Champlain?
Because my wife and I were going to, up there Saturday, twice we went through that intersection, and there was a truck parked there, just a half-ton pickup, and I was in my little pickup. And I saw the front end, and he was probably 5 or 6 feet back from the stop bar, and then he went out of sight when I got halfway through the bridge, and then he came back into sight. And I was just doing speed limit, I looked down, I wanted to, and I thought if there were 3 cables in that bar, on that bridge, instead of those wide bars, I'd have looked right straight through there and seen him.
You would just run around the curve, that curve section.
I was,
You're not
before
talking
doing the
about
story,
whole
I saw his whole front of his pickup. Then when I got halfway through the bridge, he went out of sight for a second. If we had those 1-inch cables on that bridge changed until put on instead of those wide, flat aluminum black bars. And then I still think, you look at that picture right there, that car is sitting in a little bit of a dip. If that could be raised up some. If that, I looked at that pickup and I said, that pickup was 1.5 feet higher, I'd see right on the top of that railing.
Yeah, in terms of the grade, that's what meets the V-Trans standards, and in terms of.
So River Road down 116 doesn't meet the V-Trans standard?
No, but it's slated to be changed. The reason it wasn't changed was because they would have had to go through Act 250 if they did it all with the other project.
If they weren't redoing the bridge project, they may not have changed this. I can't answer that question. And in terms of the bridge rail, I did check with one of the structural engineers that I work with and showed her some pictures. She didn't think there was anything that would meet standards, but it's definitely, something we can include in the report. It's really a V-Trans, making sure it meets the standards there, but it's definitely something that will be in the report that's noted.
Paul, did you get everything out you wanted to get out? I'm sure you got some information that you didn't have before.
Yes, you're right, and I thought it was a good report. The only thing I would add is in the winter, the snowbank really decreases your ability, if you're coming out of the Lincoln Road, decreases your ability to see cars on the bridge. And so I'm wondering if the road crew could somehow make a point of minimizing those snowbanks in the wintertime.
If it don't snow.
But the snowbanks are pushed where?
They're just, we come around the corner with the stuff down, and of course you pick up your snow, and it all goes to the right.
Paul, you're talking the snow on the bridge, guardrails?
Yes, the snow on the bridge, correct.
That's
the state.
That's the state, and they'll probably tell us just what they've been telling Jenny, Du Bois and King, it meets our standards.
Well, no, they actually do go through there once in a while and push that snow through the rails. And I said once in a while.
That the state does.
The state does, yeah. They don't do it every storm, but they do it once in a while. They push it through.
I think it bears mentioning, as long as Paul's here, it was the Lincoln Select Board that came to us to spearhead this investigation or to get this report done, and we had to apply for it because it's not in their town. But they were concerned enough to come to us with it, so that's what generated this whole thing.
Right, and I'm appreciative of that, and appreciated that you have taken it up. I just want to emphasize I'm here as somebody who uses Briggs Hill, even though I'm on the select board, I'm not representing them. So I have a different hat on, but I take your point. And I think one of the reasons was that Bill Finger brought it to our attention because he had been involved in an accident right there at the intersection of 116. His car, he was not injured, fortunately, but his car did get totaled.
There's another note in the chat from Craig. I support Paul's idea of moving Lincoln Road exit into 116 to the right and move the yellow line to the right so trucks aren't impacted turning right.
Yeah, that seems like an idea that actually could be affordable and that we could explore. And it seems like I'm confused about if there's what the interest is in terms of removing that stop sign. It seems like it impacts the stop sign, that first stop sign as you come out of Lincoln. It impacts the road crew more in terms of Bristol and what they're doing versus other people coming off. So what are there was discussion about removing that sign potentially, but it seems like Eric felt that might be a real hindrance to the job that they have to do in the wintertime.
I personally don't think it should be removed. That's just my own personal opinion.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I don't think that should be removed. There must be another solution, but you need that stop sign, especially if you're coming off of 116 and you want to go up Briggs Hill. Yeah, there's no other way.
Was that all in the chat, Michelle?
Yeah, Darla's the keep track of the chat. Val just said it's a time check.
Yeah.
We need a time check.
Okay.
Let's add, unless there's any questions or comments. The survey is technically still open if there's anyone that hasn't taken it. We're working on finalizing the report, so not sure exactly when it will be closed, but it is technically still open, and when we finalize.
What was the purpose of potentially closing Briggs Hill Road in the wintertime?
It was they were hired to go through and find the options, the different options, and it was just one of the options that they came up with. Doesn't mean we're going to close it.
No, but why, Peter? Why did they come up with that? That's why I'm asking.
The main issue that was initiated from the town was a steep slope. So initially, just looking on paper, we were looking at if we could tee it, but because of the slopes, we can't do that. And we can't flatten the slope. So we're just considering the issue was the steep slope, to come up with some sort of alternative. And again, it doesn't have to be one that the town goes with. That was an option to avoid using the steep slope, essentially.
I mean, you should, the other side of it is we were questioned by the LEPC at one point about closing Lincoln Road and redoing the Briggs Hill because we kept losing Lincoln Road to the floods. So, I mean, there's stuff out there that you haven't heard that would try to make your blood boil.
I can't make it boil much more than I saw that.
That was a serious proposal. Tim Melton down,
Yeah,
out of the county, originally, that was a serious.
Oh, yeah.
He was dead serious.
Yes, he was.
Over River Road.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the river's gonna take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
A little bit, bits and pieces of it,
Which is why you still need bricks and road.
exactly.
yeah. So that's why you need bricks.
Well, that's why we can only close it in the winter.
Our hats off to the road crew for all year round. We not had a lot of serious accidents on Briggs Hill. You know,
Well, anybody
they get up there and they do a pretty good darn job. I think.
Good, yeah, they do a fantastic job, and they have for years and years and years.
That's because anybody who doesn't live up there wants to use that road.
And there were people that commented that in the survey, that it was kept up well. It's definitely noted in the survey.
The problem never has been people coming off Briggs Hill. Never has been the problem. It's the people coming out of Lincoln. Only since lately, in the last few years, and I mean in the last probably 3 to 5 years, that it's been a major concern. Because ever since people are on like this, they're too busy on all that kind of stuff that's illegal instead of paying attention to what they're doing. I even had Susan Masterson come through the stop sign one time. She lived in Lincoln, but I come, got out of my car and went right back. But that she was driving an out-of-state car.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what was her, so I got right to the car and said, Susan, what are you doing coming through a stop sign? You lived in Lincoln how many years?
So Jamie, you'll finish the report and send it to Val.
Yep, it'll go to Val and Mike Winslow at the RPC, and we actually have a meeting on Wednesday with the RPC to present and finish it up. So if you haven't done the survey,
Get it done.
yeah, my email's not on the screen, but contact Val. She can give you a link or send it to me and I can get you the link. But I thought that's a pretty good response. It's 136. So if you did, thank you for filling it out.
Thank you
And
very much.
thank you for
Sharon.
coming.
Thank you.
That's that, you get reported and the select board discusses it and decides what to do with the recommendation.
Right. I mean, it will probably be put up on our web page as well, so people can look at the report.
And what would be the timetable for making decisions?
Probably sooner than later. I believe that road is on the schedule to be paved.
Which one?
Lincoln Road.
I'm hoping to do it next year.
So if we were gonna shove that road over or do anything like that, we'd want to do it when we were already planning on putting pavement there.
I would also hope that we, for these improvements, we get help from the state because they created the problem. We have a problem, we have the opportunity.
It definitely wouldn't hurt to ask.
They created it.
Without a doubt.
Well, I think once we get that was the other thing. Once we got a plan, Chris Gray was here last time. He said he would pitch it to the legislature, so.
Yeah.
That's.
Well, the bottom line is in regards to Briggs Hill,
it's gonna stay open.
I would look for a bond to change it. I would look for a bond holding about this select board.
Thank you folks for coming.
Thank you.
Floyd, you know, remember Floyd? Floyd told me they thought that stop sign was stupid, that he'd never stop for. I saw him come down one day, and I said, that's Floyd all in his truck. I said, I'm not gonna turn. He went right through it. He's a man of his word. Floyd Hall.
Boyd Hall?
You're Floyd Hall.
Oh, yeah.
All right, moving on. We're gonna have, you all got us all, okay.
that was the thing that really irritated me.
You want Well, can we have the people who are still talking, please leave? If they're all set, it's very hard to hear. It's getting a little bit frustrating. I'm sorry. We've been an hour and 5 minutes on this, and it's getting a little bit too much. Val, do you want to look at the schedule in terms of what else we've got coming up and maybe move some stuff around? Because we're already done. We're way over time with this.
We got Alan. We've got Alan here. He's up next. He's gonna go. So Bristol Water System Primary Engineering Report preparation, Green Mountain Engineering. Alan, you have the floor.
Great, thanks for having me tonight. I'll be quick as I can.
Alan, sorry, can you come to the table? Because I can barely see you, sorry.
Oh, see you all. So we have finalized the preliminary engineering report for the water line replacement project for the town. It's a pretty long report, 76 some odd pages. It looks at all of the 1905 cast iron pipe in the village area, some 5 to 30,000 linear feet of it. There's no good news in here. Obviously, you know, it's not cheap to replace water lines, and I think we've identified 10 or 12 projects that total, well, 15 projects that total close to $10 million of work, if you decide to do it all. Obviously, my approach as a resident would not to do it all at one time, but to be ready for whatever infrastructure bill comes along, whatever money comes along to help fund, you know, this deferred maintenance is what it is. These actually have served the town very well for a long time, but they've served their useful life. They're all lead-packed joints that we'll be surprised if there's any oakum or lead left in any of them. They leak at every joint on every street in the village of Bristol, and we've done a good job replacing the main arteries on North Street and West Street over the past few years, but we need to keep going. I think we all realize that.
And can I just interrupt? They're not completely lead line, they're just the joints are lead.
Correct.
I just want to make,
Yep.
you said lead line.
Yep.
Thank you.
Lead line pipe, lead packed joints. That's how they were constructed in the early 1900s. So our report included a hydraulic analysis of the water system, so that, and my firm had done one back in 1995, so it basically was an update to that analysis with more modern software, I guess, improved software, to make sure when we're replacing these lines, we're replacing them with the correct size to provide the fire flows that you need to provide for the village area. So that was part of this report, sort of a double check, you know, 8 inches is the minimum size required by the state for fire flow protection and to have fire hydrants, but there were some areas where we needed larger than 8-inch pipe to meet the fire flows that are required per the ISO. So the projects that we came up with, we prioritized, and I got a little bit of pushback from the state because my priority was, okay, let's match the town's paving schedule, because all the pipes the same age, it doesn't really have a priority. There's Pine Street, Munsell, it doesn't matter, they're all 1905 pipes. So to me, let's do it in concert with the town paving schedule. The state told me that I couldn't use that as a criterion for ranking replacement of water mains. So we still sort of did. We used that information and still came up with a priority list.
Alan, why isn't that a priority? Just because
nothing to do with water.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The state is giving you money to replace your water main. They don't care what your paving condition is.
Yeah, got it.
Doesn't seem very practical from our standpoint. That's what we were told. So the projects that we have identified start out on Pine Street, then Munsell Avenue, then the Reservoir to Rockydale line, Liberty Street, Maple Street, and I can go down through just about every village street that we have of water line that needs to be upgraded. So our first recommendation was Pine Street.
Liberty Street was done, well, it's 40 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's not the old lead.
Sooner than that, Peter. I've been living over there 33, 35 years, 34 years. And it was done just after we moved in.
1983.
Yeah, we moved in 80.
We have two things in there. A water line inventory that shows what all the existing water lines are from basically street to street, based on size and material and the approximate installation year. So that's one table that's in the report. And then a recommended priority list for various segments of replacement. One of the reasons that Liberty Street came up high was because of the size and the hydraulic analysis.
Okay. I figured you had a reason, but when we originally started out, it was all
1905. Yeah. You're right. Yep. No, thank you for pointing that out. So there's a few things in here. Some are just beyond useful life. One recommendation that would rank a project higher is the hydraulic analysis may have recommended a larger line size there. Or in some instances, there's no water line, and that's a very simple segment that's included in a small project.
Yeah, Liberty is 6 inches.
Yeah.
8, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, 8 inch on
Scott put that in.
Just double checking. 8 inch. So back to the, I guess, back for the list of priorities. Pine Street was our first recommended project. We've applied for construction loan monies for that project, and we've been given a compliance or a schedule in order to meet or receive funding for construction for next year. The schedule is submit your preliminary engineering report and get it approved. And we submitted that in August. I was hoping to come here tonight with approval, but we keep getting told it's the next day or the next week. So I'm hoping that happens soon, because the first thing we have to do is submit a 90% design and environmental information report by December 1st. So in order to stay on this funding path, we have some work to do.
They have to get their button gear.
Yeah.
So that's 772,000. That's soup to nuts. That's paving and everything, or is that just the water line?
That's everything.
Okay, so I had a conversation with Valerie today, and she thought that it might be appropriate to mention it tonight. So I'm going to throw it out there just as food for thought. We don't have to talk about it tonight, but we've had, everybody walks Pine Street. Everybody complains about traffic going too fast. There's no real feasible way to put a sidewalk on Pine Street. So what about making alternate streets one way?
Streets, I mean, like Taylor, then Maple comes the other, one goes one way, one comes this way.
And so your Pine would be one way and Pleasant would be the other way. You wouldn't be, if you were cutting across, and this is my thought process, if you were cutting across town, like if you were on Maple cutting through to Pine to save time, you're not going to be able to go all the way, because when you get to Pine, it's going to be might be going the wrong way. So it should deter some of the crosstown traffic. It would give us plenty of space to put in a sidewalk. It would give us, it's just food for thought.
Better make sure Pine Street is down, because when you go to the dump, you wouldn't be able to go down there. The town trucks wouldn't be able to get in. You make sure Pine Street's going east.
Can't get there.
I mean, no, it would take some thought. It's just, it was just an idea I had. We've been going through this whole traffic calming thing. It could potentially allow us to have some extra parking through the winter. I don't know, just a thought. But if we're pushing to have this designed and it's anything we want to do, we'd want to be thinking about it and feedback from the public sooner rather than later.
And as I mentioned to Peeker in our conversation, that as long as the road is torn up and if we had a plan ahead of time, there are a lot of different sources of VTrans funding for sidewalks, whether it's through the bike ped program, for the alternative transportation, or other programs that we could leverage to do that while the street's under construction for the water line.
Yeah, but I don't think you can really get a sidewalk down there.
If you went one way, you could, because
I see what you're saying.
You narrow the road.
Mm-hmm.
there would need to be a design to identify whether it would be just a ground level striped sidewalk or elevated with drainage, or, you know, those kinds of things would need to be factored in, but there would be time possibly to do that, to dovetail with a water line replacement project.
If you're doing that, then put a bike lane in too.
Yeah. Well, and part of that whole discussion would be, as Speaker suggested, like getting it out to the public and just getting a reaction from the public. The idea of changing the roads obviously is a huge thing, especially for people who have lived there for many, many years. And it's something that you're having to relearn, but you also have the side of the public that have wanted sidewalks on that road for a long, long time as well. And so can that be balanced out by that suggestion, Speaker, of making it one way and designing something that can accommodate as many people as possible?
Right, and we would want to take a village-wide look at the entire traffic pattern, see how the other streets would be affected, traffic calming, because as I mentioned to Peter, making it could actually increase speeds because you don't have the oncoming traffic you have to respond to. So that we would want to think about other ways to make sure that the traffic is moderated, or the speed of traffic is moderated.
I, for a person who's lived down there on that street for 36 years now, I think before you decide to, you ought to, minimum, you would ask the residents of that street. And second of all, do you know we only have one sidewalk in that whole, that goes north, that goes to Pine Street? Well, two, North and Pine and Maple and Pine. There's not another sidewalk that connects. Hold on, let me finish, Peter. I would like to see us, if we had never mind. Go ahead.
If we did it, it would be village-wide. We wouldn't do it to just Pine Street.
No, I'm just saying if we had a Pine Street that went all the way down Taylor to Pine, all the way down Munsell to Pine, all the way down Liberty to Pine, at least, I'm not gonna say people aren't gonna stop walking on Pine Street, because I see them and I wave to them, and yeah, I know. But from North Street down to past, almost to where Autumn Harp was, the big building that sits close to the road, you could get a sidewalk on the south side. Pretty easy. From that section from Mountain Health, across by that'd be a little tough for a sidewalk against that building, because all the snow slides off that building and land right on it. And then from Munsell to Liberty, pretty wide open again. Yeah, I'm gonna have to take my fence down and lose 2 pine trees and serve coffee off my porch. But I'll make a nickel or two off the coffee.
I vote for that.
But I think if we had sidewalks that if you wanted to go home and you say, well, I live between the Liberty and Pine, I guess I'll lock up Liberty and go all the way to the end. I'm not in harm's way too much. But you walk from the horse rink all the way up around and there's no sidewalk up that street. And my girls walked to Bristol Elementary, and the Kimball kids did, and a lot of them on Pine Street did. The Clark girls did. No sidewalks there. Do I think we should have one? Yeah. I think there's sidewalks in other places in town. We need them also. But we never had this problem until we closed Main Street, or we did the detour after the big dig on the fiasco with Munson a few years ago, going down from Maple down West Street to Airport Drive. And people went, the shortcut is the Bristol Elementary from the high school is down Liberty and over Pine. I complained a few years ago to Betcha because they continue to do that. The buses did. And I called Betcha and said, you tell them to go around. They don't need those 6 buses don't need to come racing down. And they didn't race. I mean that. They did the speed limit though. All 6 of them in the afternoon come down Liberty and go over Pine, and with people walking, and that stopped. But between 7 and 8:30 in the morning and 3:30 and 5:30 at night, it's pretty busy over there. But I love Sundays. I can play right in the middle of the road, no traffic on Sundays over there. So a lot of people walk on Sundays there. But we've talked about since I've been blue in the face here, my 14 years on the board is, if we would just do it, and I don't care what this law is, 5 years we'll enforce it, 25 miles an hour in the village. That would help the most on Pine Street. 25 miles an hour, period, in the village. You come up over Lord's Prairie Rock or over by Airport Drive and it starts 25 miles an hour. Yeah, I know, I've heard it all. Can't do it because Madison County Regional Planning said we can't do that, or the state tells us we can't. Who's running this town? Madison County Regional Planning in the state of Vermont, or the select board and the administration and the voters of this town? The voters of this village want 25 miles an hour. Let's pass it.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
Put them up. We've heard it, Michelle.
You
We've
haven't heard
heard
it from everybody, but I'm just.
No, we
saying.
haven't heard it from, Upper Meehan Road and Meehan Road and the Notro. We've heard it from the Notro people think they go too fast.
No, I'm just saying, we, if you're gonna enact that, then we really need to get a sense of what people feel. You know, you can't just say everybody wants it.
Well, a lot do. So.
But the idea is that we have, as Jill says, the idea is that we have a safe, walkable, village area. And changing the speed limit is a big part of that. If you put that on the agenda, Joe, I'll vote for that because I really believe in that. And there's a group of people who are looking at pedestrian safety that are going to present to us, in a few weeks. And hopefully that'll be some interesting findings. And I'm sure the speed limit change is going to be part of that. I've been trying to get that changed for years. Virgins is 25, and that's a state road going through Virgins. Why aren't we 25? Why are we 30 going on Main Street? Why are we 30 going on all our other streets? It's designed to be a walkable village and with priority over pedestrians, not vehicles. And so part of that is changing the speed limits.
All right. What else have we got for, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get everybody sidetracked, but what else have we got for Alan?
That's okay.
Sorry, Alan.
That's okay. So basically I wanted to report that we don't have the approval for preliminary engineering report from the state yet. I can't really give you a final design agreement for Pine Street until I get that approval. I'm not going to give you an agreement and have them not concur with our report. So I'm waiting for that to get a draft agreement back to you. It's getting chillier out every day. I just want you to be aware that I might take the risk of my own dime to do the survey and field work on Pine Street if you're in agreement that that's your priority for water line replacement. Because I can't wait until the state gives me approval and then have to wait for them to approve my agreement to go ahead with that. So I'm not asking you for any money. I'm basically saying that if you agree with this as a priority and the opportunity comes up where I've got two guys available, I'm going to send them out to do some survey on Pine Street. I didn't want to do that without letting you know.
But you're coming to us and saying that's your.
Yeah.
You were looked at as our engineer.
Right.
You're saying Pine Street.
If he can't do it now, he's not gonna get it done in time to get the money.
Right, but if you asked me, I'd say Pine Street was on your report is number one.
I have to have a time done by December 1st in order to get the funding.
And let's be clear too, that we're talking about getting the money, that either way, the money would be coming from the town. So whether the money is coming through a loan through this program or not, it would seem based on what Alan just said, I think the select board might want to consider kind of authorizing that activity outside of a loan agreement, just to keep things moving, knowing that the town should pay it one way or another. Unless Alan's actually offering to do it on his own. But anyway, I just want to put that out there.
The next item on the list is scheduling a bond vote. So and having a copy of a warning submitted by January 30th of 2022. So you have to basically show that you want to move forward with the project.
Question that Valerie, you had brought up and I've discussed with you, and my neighbors up and down that street I've watched water come out of Munsell Avenue and cross over and wash the Kimball's driveway out. I've watched it come down Maple Street. I've watched it come down Taylor Avenue and head down to Jackman's of Bristol. All those neighbors on the north side of Pine Street. Everybody asked me, when are we going to get some drainage like everybody else? Is that going to be part of this fix, so to speak? If we're going to dig up the road on Pine Street.
Well, that had been an original goal. And I think we do that outside of this waterline funding project. I think we can still coordinate that.
Outside of it, or when you say outside of it, outside of the money, but not outside of the time frame?
Correct. Yeah, it might not be funded through that particular loan program, but I think we can coordinate all of those things.
We wouldn't be paving the street and then the following year come and dig it up and put.
Right.
That's what I'm.
So you've had other work done of recommended drainage improvements for those streets, I understand. So we could incorporate some of those recommendations into our design plans for the water line project. It won't be funded through the same program, There might be other sources of funding for them, but that's another whole set of requirements. So we're trying to focus on water here and make some steps, positive steps forward on water line replacement.
Right.
Um,
So Alan, what do you need from the select board to move forward?
Honestly, I really need the approval from the state of the preliminary engineering report so that I can give you a draft agreement. Permission to allow us to do the survey would be fine with me, but because it's paid for through that program, I'm not gonna bill you for it until the funding is in place.
But you want us to say, yes, this is the project that this is our priority.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, if the work is done before the loan agreements are executed, they might not allow it through the loan program because the work would have proceeded when the agreement was signed. So my point earlier was that it would be coming out of the town no matter what. And so it's 6 of one, half dozen of another in terms of your time. So that's what I wanted to mention.
But I think what I'm hearing Alan saying is he'd rather find all these things that he's got to do with his instruments and his surveying equipment and that stuff. But if it's warm and he can see it all instead of burying in the snow and shoveling it out in January, he might not bill us until after the grant agreement.
We're not talking about months here. We're talking maybe weeks because I got to have the design 90% by December 1st. So I'm doing this fall. If you're thinking that Pine Street is the priority for you guys.
I don't mean to split hairs, but I don't know to what degree the funding program will care. If they'll make a distinction between when the work was done versus when it was billed. I just don't know. So they might not, but they might. So they might determine if the work is done before the loan is approved and executed, they might not be as eligible to be funded through the loan. So I just want to point that out. That's all.
Either way, we're gonna have to pay for it.
Coming out of the town.
Right.
So
I mean, Val, are you okay with approving Alan to go ahead and do that and just
well, that's my point. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
That's my point.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm on board. I mean, it seems like Pine has been recognized as a priority, and we've talked about it for a long, long time. So I'm fine with that, with starting with that and moving forward.
Super.
I think we're all good with it.
Okay, sounds good.
Alan, I just got a quick question. From your 94.5 report on hydraulics and stuff versus the one now, how much things changed?
In terms of the needs?
No, I guess that was more like pressure and stuff.
Yeah, they're both basically based on the tank elevation and the pipe sizes. What's changed is the diameters of the existing pipes have continued to shrink.
Okay.
So
just like my arteries.
Right. So based on the age of the pipe, the coefficients that you put into the program have changed. So we had to tweak a few things. So that's the biggest change. And of course, we've replaced a lot of water lines. So you've gained diameter or coefficients.
So it's taken away from the smaller lines because
well, not necessarily taken away, but it's
less friction loss. So it's going to go there easier than it's going to go.
Yeah.
All right.
That's all I've got.
So is that a consensus or do you?
It's a consensus. We are not going to vote on that. That is a consensus.
All right, thanks.
Need to keep something out of the minutes. I keep that.
Yeah. In the interest of time, do we want to go?
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
For interest of time, Ronald Rose is here for number 6. If we could even
and I see there's a couple other people on here that are as well. So
I'm fine with that.
Everybody okay with skipping to the slope repair?
Yeah.
All right. Item number 6, West Street Slope Repair Project, updates, change order requests.
Hopefully folks had a chance to look at the notes in the report. Let's see, I think the biggest change since the select board's last review where you authorized accepting the low bids subject to a number of loose ends being tied up by the end of next week, or actually the end of this week. We've learned that, that the Lathrops will require a $20,000 compensation for access through their lumber yard. And we learned that if that expense is added to the base contract with the contractor, that expense could be covered 75% through the grant program, which would mean that the sponsor, and the town is the sponsor, would be responsible for the balance of 25%, which would be $5,000. I communicated that to the property owners, and I did receive some feedback. Some of the property owners feel that that it was the oversight of somebody and that they shouldn't be held responsible for that. I did have a conversation with the contractor this afternoon, and he offered to, and I communicated this by email late this afternoon because I've been out of town. He offered to accept or be responsible for half of that cost, which means that the property owners or the sponsor would be responsible for the other half. So, or 25% of that other half. So it kind of cuts it all, the responsibility in half to everybody.
Or if we added that and he forgave it at the end, our 25% would be covered.
We wouldn't have to ask the property owners for that 10.
Yeah.
Right, they're 25%.
I didn't follow what you just said.
If we submit that $20,000 in there, if we do the change order for $20,000 and they don't care where the money comes from. If he foregoes the 10 at the end, that would meet the 25% that we're obligated to. So it wouldn't have to be passed on to the.
Right, the funding agency doesn't care where the money comes from. I mean, other than the 25% comes from somebody.
And the contractor would actually get out of it for less because it would only be $5,000. It wouldn't have to be 10. Correct?
I'm trying to follow that one.
25% of $20,000 is $5,000.
Right.
Not $10,000.
So you're saying the contractor would have to forgive the
$5,000.
Right.
Well, actually 15.
No, because it's a billable item through the $20,000 is a billable item through the
I see.
The fund.
Right, through the fund.
Whatever.
And out of that total, we have to come up with 25%. The homeowners.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If
Sponsor needs to come up with 5,000. Right.
If he's willing to forgive 10, he ought to be happy to forgive 5 at the end.
Well, if he's willing to give 10, we could use the other five for this and 5 for the fence.
That's a very interesting approach.
You could use 5 for the fence because the fence is 5,000 too, which I don't think the property owner should. It was thrown out
Well, the other side of that is the fence isn't required by
2 of them.
No, the fence is not required by the funding agency. The engineer thinks we should have it.
What is this fence?
I don't know.
Nobody can explain that to me, so it's a dollar amount.
Isn't it an existing fence?
No.
No?
The fence has to be put across the back of Ron's property and the next one.
Allen.
Clark.
A little bit of the Clarks, apparently.
See,
I had proposed, I mean, I don't claim to know all the details myself, and so I had proposed that early this week, either tomorrow afternoon or sometime Wednesday, we try to get everybody together, the engineers, the funding agency, and anybody else to kind of put these questions out there and answer those questions.
I mean, if the funding agency doesn't require the fence and the engineer, it's something that the engineer put in there, I don't see where we have to require the fence.
Right.
Unless you really want the fence. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, I guess I gotta ask, like the rest of the table here wants to know, what is the fence doing, keeping people from going in there? Maybe it'd be cheaper for LaRose and Clark's to shut their back parking lot off for the duration of this project, a couple of months.
No, this fence is permanent.
Oh, it's a permanent fence, sorry. Okay, I thought it was a protection, safety fence for people to go.
I think it's to keep Ron from dumping his leaves over the bank, but I'm not gonna say that out loud.
I think originally it was intended to be a safety fence, but from what I've learned a little bit about it is that it is intended to prevent future material from being placed over the bank.
Well, then why not require the fence all the way along the back of every building?
Good question.
Apparently that it hasn't been identified as a need.
Yeah,
To me, if you do it for one, you do it for
Evolved over just recent weeks, so it's.
I'd like to see this project go through. I know it's tight on the owners, and I'd like to not have to build the, 4 or 5 property owners. Because they can all tell us, until they get to the back door, we're not gonna do much. And if one of them walks away, they all walk away, just like one. So I'd like to not put any more. If he's willing to give up 10 grand, we eat the other 10 and pay for the 5. Take that 10 and pay for.
He pays for the 5.
Who's the we?
The contractor's willing to pay half of that $20,000 thing, and the rest of it will come through the grant. And we pay for the fence out of the reimbursement from the contractor.
I don't know if the fence needs to be there.
Well, it would figure, but if the engineer is saying, I don't want to put it on the 4 or 5 grand anymore.
But if I, as a landowner, says no, thank you.
I don't want the fence.
Yeah. I mean,
Or takes the fence down.
That's an open question.
yeah, I like I said, I don't, the fence isn't part of the criteria that NRCS is looking at. It's something that the engineer wanted, and God love engineers, but a lot of times they come up with an idea that's their own, that they want to see on a project, and you end up stuck with that. And it's just.
Kind of like that light out here on the intersection that Joel hates.
There you go.
One of the other things I wanted to point out was that property owners expressed concern over the fact that over recent weeks, some of the numbers have been fluctuating because we received different information or new information that kind of changes how the numbers work out. And so, yeah, there's concern about what's going to be the bottom line. And I think we're at a point where we know what the numbers are. The contractor has said that he doesn't foresee, or he does not expect there are going to be any surprises with the project. And I'd like to propose, if the project goes forward, that the town is incurring some expenses through legal reviews, and because the town will be floating these expenses initially for a period of time, there will be some level of interest payments that the town will, even if it's borrowing from ourselves from one fund to another, we still need to compensate that other fund for the interest that it would have been incurring, or there's going to be some financial impact for the town carrying this project. And so I'd like to propose that if the project goes forward, that the town accept the legal expenses and the financing expenses, so that those are not variable costs that the property owners have to be concerned about.
So then we would have that plus the trail repairs.
Correct, which is over $3,000. And hopefully there will be other ways to bring funds for that.
I just want to be upfront and know what we're paying for. As do the property owners. I mean,
right. It wouldn't be appropriate for the town to pay directly, I think, for private property improvements. But in these other, the trail repair and these other extraneous administrative expenses, I think we can, because my time, I mean, we can't even begin to account for that. So it's all kind of the same that's in the same ballpark.
If I may offer some comments. It was Halloween in 2019 that this happened.
Right.
We were the one that asked if there's funds available, and FEMA was brought in. Du Bois and King is FEMA's engineers on the ground in Vermont. They did their thing. I was asked by their rep to stay in my backyard, take pictures, do some surveying. They asked the same thing, Lathrop should take pictures. And then at some point in time, the Lathrop boys were asked about considering access. And they said, yeah, we'll consider it. Now, I don't know how many people took an interest in this bidding process, but only the one that didn't get it asked the Lathrop boys for access, what's it gonna cost? I talked to Jason this afternoon. He said, it just kind of blindsided me. So they pulled a number out of the air. And I think if somebody had done their homework early on, maybe even the engineers, I don't know, that figure might not have been 20 grand. He says there is a inconvenience because they're gonna cross their log yard where they stack all and check.
And they're gonna have to build a road down to the river because it's not, it's not accessible. It is gonna be a considerable amount of work done on the Lathrops in order to get to the river to get across.
Understand it. And then the engineers come up with a initial estimate, and then the bids come in well under. That's good. So that's what I keep getting told. Well, just think, it was this, but now it's only this. But then it jumped up of 3,000-4,000. It seems to be a moving target. I've been to my banker twice, and I says, I'll get back in touch with you. Then last week we got an email that says, oh, by the way, you don't have to worry about paying for this until 6 months after the fact. And if you agree and you don't, we're gonna put a lien on your property. That's kind of pointed. Okay.
That's not quite what the agreement says. Happy to
What was
talk.
that?
I said, that's not quite what the agreement says. What he's referring to is the proposed financing agreement that was provided to the property owners just last week. So they haven't had a lot of time to look at it and think about it. And it's modeled after the same agreement that was used for the Stony Hill Business Park project that's also being funded through grant funding, where the town's putting up the funds up front and the property owner is accepting responsibility in that instance to reimburse the municipality. And if they don't, if the funds are not received within 6 months, then the town has the authority to pursue foreclosure in the same process as a tax lien. That's not to say that the town would, but it would. It's a form of security. But if the funds are repaid in prior to within those 6 months, within that period of time, then that whole aspect of a lien goes away. It's just leverage or security in the event the funds are not paid within that time. And this agreement does not dictate how the individual property owners go about doing that. Everybody's got their private situations, and some folks have different ways to do it. It's a window of time to settle up, basically 6 months to settle up after the project is closed. So that way we would know what the final numbers are. And then folks can make whatever arrangements need to be made. It's kind of, at this point, it's flexible what those arrangements are, and it's private.
I understand security. What I don't understand is this hit us last week. And I think as we've been building up to this moment of signing, we should have had a little more heads up on some of this information is available. 6 months is better than I gotta come up with a check prior to the first load of dirt.
You're getting the problem is, Ron, you're getting the information as we get it. If we had it, we'd give it to you, but you're getting it as Valerie gets it, she's disseminating it to you. And we don't have the answers, to some of your questions, we don't have the answers, or we didn't have the answers. We're getting closer all the time, I think.
Well, again, I got the biggest piece of this pie.
Yes.
We have got the biggest piece of this pie, and this week it's this amount, next week it's this amount, it just jumps back and forth. I understand there's moving parts. Now, this access fee, I realize it looks like the town and the contract's gonna help us out there, but, he didn't do his damn homework. End of discussion, right there. The other guy did. Now, I don't know how much he beat him by. Did he beat him by more than 20 grand? I don't know.
300.
But at least the other guy went and said, okay, Lathrop, what's gonna cost for me to cross your property? 20 grand. And I think if they were visited by reps in the town early on, might not have been that number. Might have been something smaller. Might have. That's the feeling I got talking to Jason today. But it's hard for me and my sons to commit on a moving number. Now there's a possibility of one of the property owners backing out because of the email we received last week. So we were told there was money available. One of the engineers said that, so we all went running. 3 of the properties are commercial property, they don't qualify. That money's left over from Irene. So that put the kibosh to that. And so then the rest is up to each individual property owner what they'll come up with. The 2 beyond Allen got little investment, but I think there's also a cash flow problem with them. So if one falls out, will the other one fall out? Don't know.
It only takes one to fall out.
That's right.
And the one that falls out could be the one who has the least amount of damage done. So he has the least amount of repair and just say, you know what, I'll get my buddy over here and we'll just touch that up with some whatever. And say, I'm not going to, and then everybody's done, which is too bad.
Well, that's my say and concerns.
So I think Valerie's got the right idea in that now that we've nailed down most of the moving parts, to try to have a meeting with everybody all at once so that everybody can ask, you can ask these questions of the engineer, you can ask these questions of the contractor, and get an answer from the people who are actually doing it, yeah, as opposed to us trying to interpret what they want. Is that your intent, Valerie?
It is, and I think for the, in addition to just wanting to provide an update to everybody based upon all the latest information we have, is to get the select board's authorization to, if we do end up executing the contract with the contractor, to authorize a change order of up to $20,000 to accommodate this additional expense.
So that has to be approved. Right?
Do you need a motion on that, Valerie?
Yes.
So,
I think ordinarily, the select board is not involved in approving change orders on construction projects because oftentimes, like for example, with Stony Hill, I mean, sometimes change orders have to be decided fairly quickly by the project team. And I, as the town representative or the engineer or the both of us would be authorized to ordinarily be authorized to make those decisions. But in this case, I think it would be good to have the select board involved in this decision.
Go ahead, Joel.
I make a motion that Valerie sets a meeting up with to add the change order for going across the Lathrop property. Price to be determined.
Up to 20,000.
Up to 20,000, not required to come out of the property owners or the fence to come out of the property owners. Expenses line. Just the excavating come out of the property owners share.
If that is required though, that fence is required, who's paying for that?
Yeah, because the grant won't. So,
That's what I'm saying, the grant won't, the
that 10 grand,
NRCS doesn't require it.
There's not a 10.
He can say he doesn't want it.
I'm on record saying I don't want it.
Or you could take it down after it's put up.
Well, then you've already made the
You
expense.
already paid for it, right?
That's why I'm saying you don't want, if the engineer wants it, then
Let him
come
pay
out
for
of
it.
his 12%. Because he's getting probably 12% for this project.
So how do we determine if it's necessary or not?
And that's a question I think that has to be asked to the engineer and the fund, who's in charge of the fund.
So at the meeting that Val's proposing, would that be where that question would be asked?
Yeah.
I can ask it before by email or phone message, like I've done with other things. And I could.
The engineer's gonna say it's.
I told like Peter said, and I'd ask the criteria for the grant or whatever it is, if it needs to be there.
Yeah, if it's an added expense just because the engineer thinks it's a good idea, I don't, and the owners don't want it. I mean, that's the other side of it. We've got one owner who says he doesn't want it.
Yeah, if he doesn't want it, doesn't get it, then the other owners, the other person's
Yeah.
not getting it. It's only a short stint on their part.
Oh.
So this is Kevin, one of the affected landowners. I actually have the least amount to somebody's point. So we are not a commercial property, but we also don't qualify because it's not our primary residence. So I did notify Valerie and the other landowners that we are out. We're not going to be put in a position where there's going to be a tax lien or potential foreclosure on it. So just putting it out there to everybody, we're out. We're not going to participate.
Then there's no sense in having this discussion. I mean, unless the state's gonna agree to just do 3 properties, which I can't imagine they're gonna do.
The last 2 properties to the west, the minimum cost is only because of some riprap down on the shoreline along their properties. So, obviously our property's gotta go up and terrace the bank or something. Alan's gotta come up a ways, but the other 2 is minimal work there. So if the engineer cut that down to 3, is the overall project affected? That's a question that they need to be asked.
Yeah.
I guess to Ron's point there, and Kevin was saying, I didn't realize where that was. It was down on the edge of the water. I can see Kevin's point. It's way down there. It's a long ways from his property, number one. Could we get some fish and game or stream alteration money to fix that? Would they fix a stream that was washed out somewhere else?
It's above that, Joel.
Well, you said riprap along the stream, that's all.
It's not the stream, the bottom of the bank.
Okay.
It's not, none of the work
touches the
none
water.
of the work. I don't believe any of the work touches the water. I believe it's all like above the trail and.
Except the last 2 properties, as I understood it, there's still a drop off from the level spot down to the water line of, I don't know, 3-4 feet. So I think that's the area they're trying to riprap and bring it back towards our properties. Feather it back up.
Kevin, I apologize. I don't know who you are. Did you buy the old Charlie Lafley place?
Yes.
Yeah, my wife did.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now I got an idea. You're the last one then? Then it's the one between you and Clark and then yours.
Yeah.
The other one is mine.
Okay.
So I guess that question needs to be asked to the engineer, whether we can pull that little chunk off of being it's right at the end, whether we can pull that little chunk off the end and still make this go. Otherwise it's a moot point.
Right.
I did ask that earlier on, and the answer at that time was that it was important to that was the minimum necessary to stabilize that whole area. I don't remember the language that was used on that, but they felt that was the minimum that was possible to stabilize all that work up above.
Well, I think there's 3 of us that would willing to go forward. We can nail down the total price. Engineers, see if they've got some give or take, maybe feathering in Anglos to Clark's to the Roses. That'll work. To say no, that makes the whole property, not just financially, but from the engineering perspective, they're all wasting their time.
Yeah.
Well, and it seems to me fixing some of it would be better than fixing none of it. I mean, I'm just gonna throw this out there, and I don't know, this is a question for read whether the revolving loan fund would be available for the landowners to.
Well, I think we did talk about that to make that an available funding source if any of the landowners chose to explore that. So based on the most recent review of that loan program that has been broadened, we just to broaden it to include recovery from disasters.
Right. Kevin, would that make a difference for you at all? If those funds were available?
No, that wouldn't. We're tied up in other, it's all tied up elsewhere. So no, it wouldn't.
Okay.
Thanks for your honesty.
So Val, I guess we need to find out that question, whether we can move forward with the 3.
Right.
Right. Back to Ron's moving target question. So if you take that little bit of Kevin's off, and the engineer said, yeah, we can take that off, does that lower the cost of the whole project? Then here again, there's a little bit less for.
Depending on the, unfortunately for Ron, he's on the end,
big end.
he's on the big end, so if they lessen it a little bit, yeah, it's not.
No, I realize.
At this point, every dollar counts.
Yes, oh yes, yeah. Every dollar always counts, Ron.
But that said, if we can get rid of that $20,000, then it would reduce it. If you don't get rid of that $20,000, then that's only split between 3 instead of 4.
Well, we figured that out.
Well, I'm just saying, if it doesn't though, even if you're at $5,000, if he's not gonna forgive it, then what? I'm just
In our
putting it out
case,
there.
everything else equal, we would drop, about $5,000 round numbers. No fence and, the access, just those 2.
Yeah, you have the lion's share of everything.
Okay.
What is that percentage? 46% is that.
Yeah.
So now I guess we're gonna have to wait until you, I guess I would make the motion to approve the change order if we can move forward.
Yeah.
Right. Well, Joel had started a motion. I kind of lost track of it when it started going to fencing and stuff, but
I think we just did a motion
what?
I think we just do the motion to allow you to accept the change order, to go through the change order. And then once you get more information,
Well, we don't have a second, so if you want
to. Okay, so then I'll give Val authority. I make a motion that we give Val the authority to contract change order up to $20,000 for the access fee. Assuming the project move forward.
Second.
And also, is the select board in agreement to absorb the legal and financing expenses associated with the project?
I think if it makes a difference to make it go forward, I think
We'll figure it out.
we'll figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think the trail, as we've said before, the trail amount of money, I think that would be something that could be fundraised, and I'm sure the person who heads up that would be a willing participant in that, as she has been for a lot of that entire project.
Right.
All right, so I have a motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion?
Who was the second?
Ian.
Yeah.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
We're still treading water on, but hopefully.
Yeah, I'm trying to get this done it's gotta be closed done by December 1st. Yeah.
Are we going back or what's?
Peter, we only got a couple of, those won't take very long, I don't think.
What's tomorrow night?
The MAUSD
Yeah,
board.
or they consider Lawrence Memorial Library. The only question I'll let you read.
All right, so we'll go back and we'll try to run these, not rush through, but do them in a timely manner. Consider Lawrence Memorial Library building maintenance needs, roof ice, stair painting, and more.
So just quickly on this, the library brought this to our attention back, I think, in April, and Ted Lilas did a quick review of that building's needs and other buildings' needs. And we have a list of projects and we have photos of some of the areas that need to be dealt with. My challenge is that I don't really have the experience of how to move a project like this forward. I did ask Chris Hahn from Rooster Construction, who did recent work on Holly Hall's roof, for guidance. Haven't heard back. I didn't really expect to hear back by tonight's meeting. So any guidance, any suggestion about how to move forward would be most welcome.
Again, my take is here is, I'd like to, you keep after Rooster just for at least an estimate of the roof alone right now, roof ice, you know, whether it's gonna be some bars or whatever he recommends.
Yeah, they got icebreaker bars that they can put
Or
up.
something, yeah. And, but I think we need to know what the final bill is for, this building
Right.
and how that funding is gonna take care of it. If he comes up with an estimate to do just the library, roof this year, and then we'll put the painting off probably till spring.
Yeah, the painting I think can be put off. I think there's some carpentry work. You can see from one of the photos that I put out there that there's the upper eave, there's some rod at the top, and I don't know how much that impacts other structural parts of the roof. And there is a grant program coming up, and that'll be on the next select board agenda for authorization to apply for historic preservation funding. It's 50% funding up to a maximum. I think it's $10,000. I don't remember offhand. But we have a list of projects of things that we could be applying for, including more on Holly Hall. But some of the library work could also qualify.
Okay, but I think the roof, if it's doing some damage over the winter, we get an estimate, get that done, and then put that repair of carpentry stuff, you said the eaves and things of that. You have him look at it when he's there, and you can do a quick, I won't say quick fix, I don't like that word, but a repair until it's temporary, then incorporate all that, put all that into a grant for next spring. That would be work.
Joe, when you say the roof, you're talking about putting up icebreaker.
Whatever this ice, whatever, it says roof ice. I think
Right.
it's.
Some of the stuff might need to be funded just without a grant, just to get it done. Because if we.
No, I was just wondering if you're talking replacing the roof, I'm like, wow.
That's
replace the roof.
It's a slate roof as well, so.
Yeah,
I mean, if we've got somebody that we're happy with the slate work that he's doing, if he can give us an estimate and he falls within his estimate here, that we move forward with that, because we've had a fair amount of trouble finding somebody to work on our slate roofs. And, you know, if we've got a guy we're happy with, I don't think we need to go out, try and get 3 estimates to do something. We didn't get 3 on the bell tower.
No.
Because we only had one person interested because of the slate and everything. So if we've got somebody willing to do it and can give us a price that we think is reasonable, I think we should move ahead with it.
The other thing with the grant funding, the deadline is October 1. The funds wouldn't actually be available to get the work done until spring. So, and then there's the whole procurement process after that. So it's not a quick fix using the grant funds.
So the roof is, go ahead, Ian.
I was just going to say, so in part of it, like the roof issue, the stuff that Ted sort of outlined in his initial quote, you know, it's all connected. You have problems with ice on the roof, which is coming down because there's no way for it to be kept up there. And then so water buildup is rotting around the edges and things like that. And I don't know if Rooster, if they do full reconstruction and could do all the carpentry work and fix rot as well as doing the slate side of it. It seems like they can, because that's what they've been doing up in the bell tower. So like a comprehensive sort of quote from him, I think would really be useful. But I think some of like the short-term stuff might just be, if we can, if we can, in terms of if the roof is allowed to support that much weight with ice building up on there and snow building up, as opposed to just falling off onto the front steps. And if we can get something in there just as a temporary thing for this winter, since they will be open. At the moment, every year they close the steps because the ice just falls onto the front steps and falls onto people if it's open. I don't know if we can put something up there temporarily that that can be used and people can use the main entrance this winter time, and then have Rooster hopefully do the work next year if we get a grant for it.
Well, those would be icebreaker bars.
Yeah.
Which then break up the ice and divert it off to the side, so.
That, and also, when you're talking ice, you're talking, there's ice, there's the reason there's ice. You've got
Heat
loss in your attic.
Oh yeah.
Has to be looked at.
Yeah. But I don't know, does anyone know if there's a reason why there have never been icebreaker bars put on the roof? Is it because of historic building? Is it because the roof weight and what it can support? Like, does anyone know why that's never happened?
And I don't know if slate, how it works with slate, if they can put them up, so that's a question for Rooster. Or whoever.
I think we need a recommendation. I don't think we have anybody here. It sounds like we're all willing to have Rooster come and take a look and make a recommendation, and we'll make a decision based on that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm assuming we're happy with the work that he's been doing on this building, and there's no reason to, if he's reasonable, there's no reason to be searching for somebody else to do the work.
I reserve judgment until we get his invoice.
Yeah. Well, that's what I said.
Right. So maybe ask Rooster in terms of like looking at it as a whole, and then if he had a suggestion in terms of just ice sticking, and ice staying up there for the wintertime. Is there a inexpensive solution that he can put up? It may not be the case. It may be something where they just need to close that front entrance again and people enter through the rear. But the ice is a problem around the building anyway, so.
Have you got enough direction?
I do, thank you.
All right. Consider coordination with MAUSD board regarding appointment of Bristol representative to fill vacancy. Now, Valerie explained to me today, which I didn't realize was the case. Last time around, we appointed this person. This time, all we're doing is coordination with that aide.
Right, yeah, they do the interviewing and appointing in coordination with the select board, and they're meeting tomorrow.
They changed the rules after.
Yeah. I guess my question is, who changed those? And
the state.
The state did change those?
The state legislature. And in the email thread that I posted online, and you can find it through a link through my notes, Don Griswold did provide the statutory language that was approved by the legislature that made that change.
Yeah, so who wants to go to this tomorrow?
So one recommendation is for the select board to delegate either one or two members to participate in tomorrow's board meeting, to participate in the interview process and the selection process. Or alternatively, if members of the select board feel that you're already acquainted with all of the candidates enough that you want to deliberate an executive session to make a recommendation tonight as a select board, I just put that out there as an alternative.
I'm not sure we can recommend anybody. We haven't interviewed anybody.
Well, we had this conversation earlier today, and it's like, haven't interviewed, we don't know. I mean, you know people personally, but.
I was gonna say, I know all three of them.
It's just an idea.
Mm-hmm. I can't go tomorrow. I'm planning on going to the DRB.
Yeah, I'm going to be out till at least 7:30 again.
What time is it? Where is it?
It's 6
tomorrow.
Imagine it. Library paper, I imagine.
Oh.
Peter's like, I don't want to go, but.
No, I don't. Ken's got.
You can zoom in. You don't have to physically go. You can zoom in. I think.
Darla, is that
What are the
something?
times?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I said it a second ago. I could do that tomorrow. If I can zoom in, I can do it.
6 to 7.
Valerie, can you send me the contact information?
I will try to do that. I don't know that I have the login information, but,
Or who I would contact to get that login information?
yeah, that would be Dawn
Don Griswold.
through those,
Yeah.
that email thread.
I might be able to pop on. Well, I have to record the DRB meeting at 7, but I could, if it's before that, right? So I can maybe join.
Yeah.
I mean, the interviews, they're not long interviews.
Should be done by 7.
And I don't know what their plan is for deliberating and how the board after the interviews will they make a decision right then or at the end of their meeting? I don't know. How to do that.
So you two will do your best to be there.
I will attempt to join.
Awesome.
Okay.
Everybody happy with that?
Can't have 3 of it, and we'd have to warn it,
Yeah.
right?
Stony Hill Business Park Infrastructure Project update. Moving right along.
No, most of the information I wanted to share with you, I've put in my town admin report, so I won't spend any time going through all of that. But I just wanted to make sure that folks had an opportunity to be updated on the project. Things seem to be going very smoothly. We're really getting into the money now with the grant funds, and we began our monthly project team meetings, and so far things are going smoothly. No action is needed on the part of the select board, and this dovetails with the next agenda item about the crosswalk.
Move right into it then.
That one, Darla, I just sent you an email with the agenda for tomorrow night, which has the link on it. I think it's on it.
Okay. Review of what?
Here's a little update of the business park. I shot this yesterday.
Hey.
Amazing.
Hey up there, Ian.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Wow.
there it is there.
Yeah, well, wait a minute, you didn't see him on a septic down there, right on the end.
Yeah, right here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You know, on the edge of the road. Whew.
You know, somebody emailed me or texted me and said, what's going on behind there? Are we not doing good PR or what? I don't know.
Yeah, so coming along.
Really cleared out.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. I can hear them at my house.
Oh no. All the beep, beep, beep.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
All right. All right, onward. Review of West Street Crosswalks design quote and selection of contractor.
You make a motion to go to Otter Creek Engineering. You want to move along?
Well,
no, I mean, they're good contract, they're good engineering firm. The low bid?
So this is just for them to come up with a concept.
yes.
This is not construction or anything, right?
No.
Well, the product would be a design that we could hand to a contractor to get the cost estimate and build it.
I think there's a lot of stuff in, I mean, I don't know if it's appropriate to discuss it in open session, but I think there's a lot of stuff in a couple of the others that we could wean out and possibly come within and use somebody that we're familiar with. I mean, there were only a 2-page.
Well, as I noted in my report, the responses were quite different. They vary quite a lot in their attention to detail and their approach to the project. And it might be, I recommend discussion in executive session.
Just gonna say, let's discuss this in executive session.
Perfect. American Rescue Plan Act funding update. Begin discussion for potential projects, funding and next steps.
Well, given the hour, and the volume of information there is to get our arms around. Perhaps we just make a note that this is where we're at. In my report, I begin to list some of the potential projects and some of the potential costs and some of the potential other funding sources to leverage more money for different projects. And obviously, it's going to require more conversation, and there are other entities, nonprofit organizations, citizens who have other ideas about how some of these funds can be used. So given the hour and that we have other agenda items, I think I recommend that we keep this in mind and continue the conversation at an upcoming meeting.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna put out there that I think we ought to think about having the public vote on this. Maybe we come up with, a certain number of projects and let them vote, like give us a priority of what they think should be, in that list.
Right. Yeah, first, I think we need to
Generate a list.
get a sense of what that list looks like, because I began a list, but there are probably other things that escape my attention at this point, and other people have on their minds. So,
Yeah. And I want to make another plug for the Maple Broadband. I know that Steve's come to us before and was asking a good amount of money. I have more details, and I've been talking with our delegate Dan Sonneborn, and he's going to come to us hopefully soon with maybe some revised numbers. The numbers that Steve presented before, it was based on a per capita, and looking at the numbers that he's recently provided in terms of who are underserved here in Bristol, that number is very low. It's only like 5.6%. And so we have, even though we have 3,800 people, of those, there's only 5.6% that are sort of they're classified as underserved. So we're actually very well served here already with fiber and with high-speed internet. But I'd like to get a number from them that's more presentable. That's something that maybe we would entertain. Over replacing the number that he suggested before, which is based on amount of people in the town. So, but I do think it's a project that obviously these funds are designed for something like that. I do think it's up to Bristol to support the other towns as well, especially our surrounding 4 towns, because of the connections we have with schools and education. But I think it's a viable thing, but we just need to get a number that we can all sort of agree on, hopefully.
Right.
We can stomach. Okay, consider renewal of A. Johnson bequest investment.
So Town Treasurer Jen Myers recommends that we reinvest the principal into the same 48-month CD account that at the current bank, and the interest earned be deposited in a fund for future tree work. As I pointed out in my notes, and perhaps I might be corrected on this, but there really isn't a revenue fund for this to earmark this expense other than miscellaneous income that I'm aware of. So I'll just reiterate my suggestion from a while ago that we consider establishing a tree maintenance or tree something type of reserve fund. And it doesn't have to be a capital reserve fund. It could just be a reserve fund for ongoing tree investment.
Make a motion that we accept the treasurer's suggestion.
Good.
I'll second that.
Just a question, Valerie, and I don't care if it's the National Bank of Middlebury or People's United, or People's, or any of the banks around here. She said here NCFCU was 7.7, which is a good interest rate for 48 months, but she only quoted Middlebury's for 24 months. I'd like her just to check what 48 months is for the other banks. All the other banks we deal with. Just to make apples to apples.
Sure, that makes sense.
Further discussion? Hearing none. Go ahead, Val.
I was just gonna say, I just think the public knowing that there was a tree fund would make a lot of people happy.
We have expense line items, but we don't have an income line item. Right.
Exactly.
Are we going to get a report on at least the 5 ash trees on the park sometime for what to do with them. It's been like 2 years this coming May it'll be.
I thought John and them, I thought they did something. They already did it.
They asked, the Emerald Board Committee was gonna bring us, or did they bring us, and did I just have a space?
I think you might have missed that meeting, Joel, but they did present a report and I did recommend inoculating the one ash tree on the park.
Could we take some funds out of that to do that? Out of this?
There's a line item for that.
Oh.
There's a parks tree line item for that.
Okay.
Again, it's an expense line item.
Yeah.
So who seconded that?
Darla did.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Consider request for Bedard family for interment of ashes and placement of a gravestone in the Briggs Hill Cemetery.
I just have a quick question. When I was reading through this and looking at the map. So did Michael say he's gonna be cremated and his ashes spread somewhere else so he doesn't need a lot there? So this last spot that's open will be for Brad and that will be the end of it, right?
Correct.
All right, I'll make the motion that we allow the Bedard family to inter Brad's ashes at Bristol Cemetery.
Second.
I have a motion in 2 seconds.
Knowing this from when my sister-in-law passed away in June, you can have a casket and an urn on top of the casket. So it doesn't take, the urn of an ash, doesn't take a space on the casket. So they could put a casket there anytime. So just.
Yeah, it's a, yeah.
Okay.
Point well taken.
Further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Grant application authorization request, Recreation Department for Rise Vermont grant. Rise.
Make a motion to approve the application.
Okay. Further discussion?
Is there a second?
Yes, Joel.
Thank you.
Hearing none, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Oh, I'm hearing myself back through there, that's why I'm getting all confused here. Authorization to purchase computer screen through the Capital Technology Fund.
Make a
The
motion.
idea is for the listers to have a screen that has a microphone and a camera on it, which their current monitor does not have.
Ian, you made the motion?
Second.
Yep.
Joel seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Designation of Bristol delegate to VLCT passive annual meeting.
This is only if anybody wants to go. I won't be able to attend, but anybody else?
Can't hobble in? Valerie, you can't be able to hobble in?
No, thank you.
Or,
Do we need to be there?
Only if the town wants to have an active role in their business meeting. Basically, a delegate to help vote on their policies, to be engaged in their policy discussions and be a voting member.
It's on Wednesday.
No.
I gotta work.
I can't.
I'm leaving for me.
You can't.
I don't think anybody participated last year, and
Then
I
let's,
was the last one who did.
Keep that trend.
let's keep the trend alive.
Okay.
It's a modern tradition.
We're Review and approval of what minutes?
August 9.
August 9th? Is that the only one we've got ready?
Unfortunately, yes.
Motion?
I make a motion to approve the August 9 minutes with the minor correction.
Okay. We got Michelle and Joel.
Yep.
Further
Michelle's
discussion?
provided her edits.
She said with her edits.
Yep.
All those in favor signify by saying aye, raise your hand. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
You should put all these at the front of the meeting, so we would have felt really good about getting through.
Yeah, and then, all right, authorize accounts payable and liquor licenses. You have the warrants, Tasha?
Yes,
135, 361, 39.
Yes, there, Ken?
Tasha, did you get that?
wait, say that one more, because okay, sorry, I was reading it 138. Yep, 135, 361, 39. Yep,
You got it.
thanks.
And we have liquor licenses.
I know we have, can I see that? No, we didn't have, I didn't see the licenses in there. Val, I didn't see the liquor licenses down here to sign. I know there's one for what used to be Mary's.
Right.
And then there was Sharon did a special permit.
Yeah, the catering permit was approved by the town clerk a week or so ago because the event occurred prior to this meeting.
Yeah.
The question is, do we need to be involved in signing those because she knows who has licenses and who doesn't? Can we just move to have her deal with that?
The special events?
Yeah.
Catering permits.
I'd be fine with that.
I mean, do you see any reason for them to come before us?
Well, let me just give you, for instance, let's say, Ian, I hate it when you do that. I really do. It bugs the crap out of me. If this Woodbelly, let's say Green Peppers wants to come up on the park every Sunday afternoon or Saturday afternoon, and Sharon just signs it, doesn't know. And then we hear the wrath of God from Covers and the rest of it. This is on Main Street, who pay a tax. And they say, well, you know, we're going to look like we got egg all over our face. When it says, I don't know, we didn't approve it. We, as again, I said earlier, my little got up on my stand. We're asked to approve things. And that's why I just think that we should know. And if we say, boy, I don't know if we should allow something like that to come in and take.
That's not our decision, though. That's not our decision for something like that. We can't decide if a business comes in just because it's competing with another business. I don't think that's right. That's not our job.
The only thing we're approving is the use of liquor at a catering event, something similar, like when the fire department had theirs. It wouldn't have to come before us.
Okay, so where's this Woodbelly gonna be? Gonna be on the park? I don't know. Where is it gonna be? Do we all
There is
know?
an application right there. I recommend that this be a future agenda item rather than be debated tonight, because we would want to have it be publicly, out there that this might be a decision that gets made. But also give us a little bit of time. I mean, it's a question that's been introduced, and we might want a little bit of time to think about it. And as I mentioned to Peter, that Waitsfield somehow established an application fee where they get $15 for every application for administrative stuff. And, it adds up, and there's administrative expense to these things. The town does get an application fee with the annual liquor licenses. I don't know how Waitsfield established that. The current clerk, it was in place before her time, many, many years ago. And the same thing with being delegated the authority to sign off on these things. The deal there was that the select board be provided a report from time to time about, or at least it be kept track of somehow of how many things got approved and by who, but the select board did not have day-to-day attention to that.
Well, I like that fee thing. Can we do that?
Regardless, right?
Yeah, and Joel, to your point at the beginning, my laugh was not meant to be rude. It's actually, I enjoy your what ifs, and I look forward to them because you always bring interesting points. And I apologize if it comes across that I'm smirking or something like that. I am definitely not trying to do that. I do enjoy what you have to say, and I didn't mean to be disparaging. I apologize.
Thank you for that, because to me, it looks like you're, okay, Joel's running his mouth again.
No, I'm not doing that at all. I very much look forward to your point of view because I think it makes us a well-rounded board. So I apologize if it comes across like that, and I'll be wary of that next time.
Okay, thank you.
We can't always agree or it wouldn't be good anyway.
No.
All right, we're ready for select board roundtable. Michelle?
Were there votes to approve those liquor licenses?
We don't, we just sign them.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
And the one that I saw online isn't here to sign, so I'm not sure where it is. Now, my question was for Eric, and I asked him before the meeting.
Okay.
I got my answer.
Darla?
I don't have anything this evening.
Ian?
Is Eric still there? I can't see.
Yes.
He's hiding in the back.
Hi, Eric. So I've been trying to make those picnic tables for the last, I don't know how many months now. Is there potential to store them? I know you don't want to do this until next spring when they can be built.
I can. Right out behind the house shed.
Not undercover, I guess, that's what he's saying.
No, can you store them undercover somewhere?
No, not under, well, you built me a new town and I could.
Trying to do that.
Actually, Ian, I don't have any room to store them. I'm full right now.
How many are there, Ian?
There's gotta be 5, 6.
Are they put together?
Oh,
What's in the old water trailer that was buried west of the shop?
in the water trailer.
The trailer that,
Jail cells are in there.
No.
And bicycles.
The police trailer, there's a jail cells are in that one. The other one that he's talking about on the other side of the gray barn, that's there's the doors that we took out of the town garage that we replaced, the panels and the tracks and stuff in there. There's road closed barricades in there.
is there room?
There is room if somebody wants to lug them in.
There you go, Ian.
I can't lug them in. They're literally on pallets. They weigh too much. If you want to show me how to drive a machine with a fork, I'll do it, but.
Problem is though, is where they gotta go, they have to go way in the front of the trailer. That's why they need to be lugged in. I can't put them in with the forks.
I see.
You just put them outside the salt shed and then put a tarp over the top of them?
You could do that. I could bring them down and put a tarp over them and do them that way. I just got no place inside for them.
Okay. Do you have tarp? Do I need to get tarp?
Yeah, you'll have to, yeah, I don't have any tarps.
How big of a?
Oh, probably
I would say you get them set outside and measure what you need for the tarp and go buy it.
yeah, I can do that.
Then they have one on this, Brendan.
I have some.
What do you got?
I got a
Size?
30 by 30.
Probably 12 by 10 and something like that.
That'd be pretty close.
You know.
Eric, can you put them where they're just keep them on the 2 pallets and like have them side by side or something, and I'll just get a tarp for each of those?
Yeah, I mean, I got them stacked on pallets now, so we can go in with the fork on the lower and pick them up.
Okay. And just have two pallets as opposed to stacking the 2 pallets. It might be just easier just to keep them on the 2 pallets.
Yeah, I put the 2 pallets side by side.
Yeah. No, just keep them like that. And then so where are you thinking of? Where can you put them? Around the side of, like where you put the where we put the salt barrels, around that edge, or somewhere else?
Yeah, right down there where the salt barrels are.
Okay.
Gotta keep most of the snow off of them.
Yeah,
it's still
pretty protected.
Heat out there, so it'll keep most of the snow off, but not all of it.
Yeah, and if they're tarped and I can wrap them, then that's fine. And then they'll sit there for a few months.
What do you want to do with the barrel?
Yeah, and then I'm working on the salt barrels.
Oh,
Garbage
no, the garbage cans.
That's coming this week. So I want to talk to you also about, I need to join them together, put the stickers on, and I want to put the 2x covers. I wanted to ask you if you can, those 2 need to be moved, those old ones, which I guess we could just store around the back, the original trash cans, but I'd like to have one moved that's on the cover side over and replace the one by Melissa's because it has a broken foot and just leans over all the time. So 2 need to be pulled off and stored, and then 1 will just go over by recycled reading. And I'll email Val and you just to get that detail, and I'll put the new ones up. And then I just can't lift them; they're just too heavy for a single person to lift and move.
Yeah, we'll just bring the loader down.
Okay. Yeah. So yes, move one across the street. Take the one that's by Melissa's right now, because since it's broken, pull that out of service, as well as the other one from the cover side. Okay, super. Thank you. And then I had one more question. It was just about a sidewalk question. If anyone knows on the board, on Mountain Street, we have sidewalk on pretty much both sides, but there's a section which is by the Bushy property that doesn't have sidewalk. And I was just curious if anyone knew why that was never completed. It sort of ends, goes around, and you have to join it back up a little ways up. Does anyone know why that was never done?
My houses. I don't know.
Robert Bushy's, I think it was just steep. He's got a steep.
Is that what it was? I know it is steep, so it probably was more complicated to do, perhaps. But it goes across he has this whole field right there, and there's no sidewalk there.
That and the fact that there was no house there to access. I mean, the others, they did retaining walls and stuff. Now, I was joking, but not joking.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Okay, I was just curious. Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Joel.
Ian, speaking of salt barrel, if you need one more for the winter, I've got one left. You want it? If you don't, it's going to the junk pile.
Don't need one, but thank you. Because I think I got a spare from you anyway.
Okay, Eric, I've had some people ask me, you'll probably do some sidewalk trimming sessions before you get started doing things?
Yeah, you missed, Brett brought that up earlier, so.
Okay, Chris Lathrop from DuBois and King saw me Saturday, and I know you don't have any control over there, but maybe I'll call to Dan. And I noticed if you come off the river road, you gotta get right out on the edge of the road to see, where the bushes are behind that guardrail coming off the river road, and they head down south on 116.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you trim those or that state.
Well, I got the boom mower coming, Wednesday morning. It's being delivered Wednesday morning, so
okay.
I can put that on the list I have and go down.
And I noticed that I went that way this morning and came back that way tonight. 116, and he says the 2 angle signs that there's a corner above, you gotta get right almost on top of them. The trees hanging out, you get by roses there, you don't see the sign till you get almost to roses, that there's a corner there.
Where's this?
Going down south on 116, so if you want to tell them.
Adams Upholstery.
By Adams Upholstery, those 2 signs that say pointing.
I can't trim on State Road.
Right, no, but it may be a call.
I can call Kevin, yeah.
Yeah, and then, Valerie, I don't mind taking the lead on for you. I just applied for a grant, it's 90% paid for by Efficiency Vermont for changing controls for heating systems. So you can put it all on digital or all on computer. So you can set your thermostats from your home. You could do this office. You
have a building in mind?
Whether it's this building or the library or anything, they're paying for controls, they're paying up to 90% right now. They're paying 90%. You could do, so I just put a grant in for $46,000 and all I had to do is pay $4,600. So anyway, I'll get some more information and I'll send it off to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
The library would be a great contender for that. They have all older mercury-filled thermostats, and I've tried to update those, but that would be a great building to do.
$5 for every mercury thermostat you return.
Yeah. So, and again, I drove down Church Street this afternoon, and 2 basketball hoops are
They're still there, they've been there.
right out in the middle, right out on the edge of the road, hanging right over. Because it tilts down a little bit, and that basketball hoop is 2 to 3 feet right out in the road. I'm asking Eric to go down through the dump truck.
Yeah, the problem is the windshield gets there before the back of the dump.
Well, maybe the wing will get there. Put the wing on early. Yeah, so, anyway, that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay. Valerie?
You don't have anything?
No.
No, I'll pass. I think my tier report had a lot in it.
All right. Correspondence?
And online is a pretty good list of correspondence and other information that the town has received on different projects. The Green Lantern Solar, they've reached out to the Planning Commission and others to follow up on the project, and just other information on town stuff.
Perfect. Executive session.
I make a motion, we enter executive session to discuss contract negotiations for one VSA section, 313? Is that right?
A3.
A3.
Have a second?
Second.
It's not A3, that's personnel matters.
Oh, sorry.
Section 313.
All those in favor signify by saying aye, or raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
You get all.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sherry.
Hi, Jimmy.
Night,
Hi,
guys.
Jimmy.